15-2019 as amended. Is there anything else that needs to be changed, switched, deleted, added? Nothing? Okay, so moved by Creelman, seconded by Martin. All in favor? That carries. And we have approval of the previous minutes. That council approves the minutes of session 15-2019 as circulated. Moved by Nix and seconded by Mantelo. And is there any discussion on those minutes? Seeing none, all in favor? That carries. And now we're at public question period, and for the gallery's information, it would be appreciated if the questions that are provided are not regarding the Island Lake Family Park issue, that we are dealing with other issues. So if there's anyone that wants to come forward and pose a question to council, we'll attempt to answer. So far, so good. Okay, thank you very much. So as stated, we will come back to the meeting and are welcoming your comments on the proposed park development. There are no items on unfinished business. So now we're going into the first item of new business, which is the 5th line south of 25 Side Road slope stabilization tender result. And Mr. Dunmore.
Thank you for council for receiving this report on desk today. As you're aware, this road has been closed since the spring of this year. We put together some design documents and that was tendered over the last couple of weeks. The tender closed this morning at 10 o'clock. And I'm asking council for two things. For number one, a budget amendment to allow us to transfer funds from the blind line rehabilitation reserve and to transfer it to this project. I'm also asking that the town accept the bid from RM Construction for this project. RM Construction did the stream realignment on the Mono-Agila town line just north of 20 Side Road back in 2010, and RJ Burnside has also worked with them in the past couple months, and we believe they put together a great price for us. The estimated budget was around $450,000, and they've come in at a very good rate for us, and we hope to get this road open before winter.
So are they in a position that they could start construction as soon as possible?
As soon as possible, yep.
Any questions from council members regarding this?
On that blind line reserve, Mike, I'm just trying to think, how many years have you been trying to build up that reserve so that you could actually do something on the blind line? And every year something comes up, and yeah, let's say it's five.
It really is our priority.
Tears coming down my eyes.
It's our highest traffic gravel road in the town, so it will keep coming back to council. But lucky enough, we have this reserve to take care of an emergency situation this year.
Any further questions of Mr. Dunmore? Seeing none, we have a motion that council for the town of Mono accept the bid price of $307,432.77, including all taxes from 560789 Ontario Limited, operating as R&M Construction for the stabilization and completion of the 5th line south of 25 Side Road. And further, that council approve the budget amendment for funds to be utilized from the existing blind line rehabilitation reserve. I have a mover, moved by Martin and seconded by Mantelo. Any further discussion? All in favor? That carries.
Thank you.
So you can go anytime now. Okay, so now we're going to move into the public meeting. So just in terms of process, council is here to listen to your comments and possible enhancements of what it is that staff has been able to produce for us for the development of these park areas. understanding that the monies being proposed are coming from DC charges that were raised through developments over the last number of years, mostly from this particular area in Island Lake and the Fieldstone subdivision, and also proposed funds to come out of our Parks and Lieu fund, and anything that is over above that would be on the tax levy, but it appears at this point we're kind of even Steven with that. So what I'd like to ask is anybody that wants to have comments, please come forward and share them with us. If, unfortunately, in terms of numbers of people, if you feel your comments have been duly noted, feel free to say I concur or I agree or yay or whatever, as opposed to having repeated presentations. And it's not because we don't want to hear from you, it's just in terms of trying to get this moving along, because we've been in this process for a long time and we would like to put some amenities in the parks to allow that community to enjoy the area. So if anyone wants to come forward, please state your name and address, and that will be recorded in the minutes. Yes, Mr. Early.
Your Worship, just for the record, you have received 4 pieces of correspondence as well, just to ensure that they're the same ones we're working off of. So you've received correspondence from, I'll just use last name, Mahovsky and Botello, indicating objections to the Fieldstone Park. But they have indicated they will be speaking tonight. You've got correspondence from Moxie regarding concerns regarding the driveway in and the parking area within the family park. And you've also got correspondence from Jaeger requesting that with the tennis courts that a shade structure also be constructed. So that's all I'm aware of. I don't know if Council's aware of any other correspondence.
I know that Mr. Carter did circulate, but I don't know if he copied any of staff on the circulation, but that's fine. He's here in attendance tonight. I did receive, and I'm sure lots of us have received phone calls and emails with concerns, etc. And we will take them all under advisement as we try to move this project forward. So, anybody wants to be first? Come on, Terry. Come on. Come on, Terry.
I wrote something that I was going to read with everybody. Is this maybe too late?
No.
That feels like I should clean up now. Yes. Okay. This will be hard not to speak emotionally because we're talking about our home, so please forgive me. Oh, I've got to talk into that. Absolutely. So my name. Oh, sorry. Might be a little bit high. Might have to go scooting over here. I'll
That's
do this
fine.
one if that's okay. So I'm reading this like if you had got this letter, all of you. So my name is Lucy Benici. I live at 38 Mika Avenue on Fieldstone subdivision. I live there with my husband and 2 children and my mum and dad. So, dear Madam Mayor Ryan, Deputy Mayor Creelman and Councillors McIntosh, Martin and Nix. I'm speaking to you regarding the proposed Island Lake Family Park development. We reside at 38 Meek Avenue, Mono, and so are directly affected by the proposed development. We're hoping that before anything is decided, that there will be the important and vital environmental studies done to see if the fragile environment, including wildlife, is adversely affected. Light pollution, noise pollution, traffic, increasing crime will hopefully be fully addressed, but we're writing from a purely personal, deep concern. Like the rest of our neighbours on our side of the street, we all paid a very large premium to have the view that we all currently enjoy. And this is not just us, but all the residents of Fieldstones that enjoy the trail, and I watch them every morning with their dogs and biking with their families, along the proposed site. It's not just the natural beauty, it's also the wild turkeys that come to visit, the deer, the sound of the crickets, flocks of goldfinches, to name just a few of the things that we truly, truly treasure. For us, it was worth the investment for many different reasons, and I'm sure all my neighbours have their own stories of why their particular spot was important for them. For us, the search for just the right spot was extensive because we had to consider my elderly parents that live with us, as well as the rest of the family. In 2016, the time had come to leave our family home of 20 years as the need to be closer to hospitals, doctors, and other important services was too important. It was very tough. Our home was surrounded by 2 acres of gardens and trees and was a haven of sorts. Peace and tranquility has been so important to us. We are a bereaved family. Our only son died in a horrific car accident, and our middle daughter spent most of her childhood at Sick Kids, battling an autoimmune disease from which there is no cure. And my dad has been in and out of hospital with many, many challenges. Right now, he's got pneumonia. We just came back from the doctors today. So peace and tranquility has been so, so important to us, and we were willing to pay that very extensive price in order to get it. I'm sorry. We know we're no different than many other families that have had their own challenges. We know that. We're not special, but we've been very lucky to remain strong and continue to battle health challenges. Thank you. Be all right. I'm sorry. We've been very lucky to remain strong and continue to battle health challenges that frequently come along. But we felt truly, truly blessed when we came across Fieldstones, and in particular lot number 141. It seemed like our prayers were answered. We were close to hospitals, doctors, we had our trees, beautiful countryside, and mum and dad could feed the birds and sit outside and not even feel they had neighbours. We picked a model that had the most windows so we could sit out and look out and feel that peace we truly needed. Sure, it was a push to pay that expensive premium, but the emotional payoff we felt was so worth it. We're not quite sure how to express the anxiety that we're now feeling about this proposed development. From a practical point of view, surely money allotted would be better spent replacing the trees that are dying, maintenance that's not been done this year, strengthen a trail path that continues to erode with bad weather to the point where it's closed off. There are far more families that use that trail to bike, walk their dogs, jog, etc., than would use a basketball court where when that path is closed, it is truly missed by many, many people. A pollinator garden like the one on Hockley Road could be wonderful, great for the environment, an educational place for families to enjoy and contribute to. There have to be many more options that don't include replacing this beautiful place with concrete, lights, traffic, noise, potential jumping crime. You all ran your election platforms with a strong environmental message. Some of you even knocked on my door. And you promised, if you got our vote, that future development was not something that you took lightly. So here we are. We voted, and now it's time for you to uphold your end. This place is our home, our haven. Please don't take it lightly. We hope you have your important support. With open, warm regards. I also want to say, I feel the same for the residents that are on Island Lake. Their homes, do they want it lit up with lights? And I worry that the people that think having a basketball court is great for their kids, that would they even get a chance to enjoy the court? Because I'm telling you now, it won't be just Fieldstone residents that are going to be coming. It's going to be words getting out. There's going to be a lot of people. There will be an increase in traffic. I'm already worried about crime. We've had quite a bit of it on our subdivision. So those are the other things, to consider. I just feel there could be other options. And if we have to go that route, do we have to have it lit up? Do we have to have the light pollution? Can there be compromises that we can all come to? Because I've had young kids. I understand how important it is to have, recreational facilities. But we are opposite Island Lake, where there's a volleyball court. I hardly ever seen it get used. It's already flattened. It's ready to go. I respect the people that would overlook that, but it's so far away from their homes. This is on our neighbor's doorstep. Just to me, there's a lot of things to weigh up here. And I just really, really like for you to consider all of it. So thank you very much for your time and your patience.
Is there an opportunity for
Thanks, guys. I'm speaking for everybody and the kids, people that have been.
any
Sorry.
questions from council members for the presentation? Go ahead.
I'm going on memory.
Yes,
I
I
didn't-
remember you, Mr. Nix. You
didn't-
got my vote.
No, I'm compromised.
Sorry.
I didn't remember in the plan that there was any plans for lights in the Fieldstone Parkette. The what?
Basketball court floodlights behind our house.
There was plans for that? Okay. It went over my head. I'm sorry. I missed that.
I don't remember seeing that.
So the most recent one, August 19th, 2019, or no, correct? Something to do with floodlights.
I'm reading it right now, at least the one that's in my package, and Kim, my plan doesn't say anything about lights. But the other question I would have for you is,
Yes.
if the plan was scaled down to only include the, what do you call the structure the kids slide on and swings, that like there is over in Island Lake family playground equipment,
Mhm.
would you object to that?
No, I mean, I certainly don't object to,
It's the basketball
For-
court.
because you're talking about a certain demographic that is attracted to that sort of thing. And we do have a history of crime in our neighborhood. And if it was just Fieldstone, I know a lot of people and their kids are wonderful. And I enjoy seeing them play. I mean, who doesn't enjoy hearing kids having a good time? But let's think about, I mean, I've heard there could be like a frisbee golf thing. I mean, it sounds great, but in reality, you're going to be attracting people outside of Fieldstones. And with that comes a certain, the traffic. There's just so many things that it can lead to. And I think, initially the premise sounds like a great idea. And I thought, well, is it going to affect me? It sounds like a little bit of grass, but directly outside we are, it's just a haven for birds. The turkeys come up to our bird feeder. And I don't think they're going to be dodging frisbees and basketball. It's just there's so many things that we were drawn to. And if we'd even had an inkling that we were going to have a basketball court, and we wouldn't have invested $90,000 extra into a home that, that was a lot. So we were buying into the concept of the peace and tranquility, and to us it was worth it. For us, it's a necessity. It's not even something that we just would like to have. It's actually a necessity, and I think Ms. Martin would understand where I'm coming from a little bit on that. So it's so critical, really. And it's not just us. I don't want to speak out of turn, but I know some neighbours along the way are also battling very many different things, challenges. And this is just so stressful to even contemplate. But I don't want to cut off the idea of having something that the kids can enjoy. Absolutely not.
Because our physical problem with the whole area that goes around that portion of the eastern side of the subdivision is the grade. So if we were to put the parquet, which is the playground equipment, in any other area, we were going to be spending double the money in order to shore it up to keep it from falling over. That particular area was relatively flat, and so that's why we were looking at that area. The half court was again just an idea. The disc golf was just an idea. So I'm glad that you've come forward, and
Thank you for your patience.
that's the reason why we're doing this, because we want to make sure that the money that we have, that we're going to be expending it in areas that people are going to be able to use and enjoy.
Absolutely.
One of the problems with the Fieldstone subdivision, a lot of the younger families had expressed concerns for many years about having to travel so far over to Island Lake in order to have a playground. So we were trying to figure out an area.
Right.
So that was sort of the initial thought about that.
I understand. I just would point out that, and I feel for those families, and I think there's definitely should be something done regarding the basketball court. I think the majority of Fieldstone residents didn't move in with the idea or pay extra to think they were going to be getting a basketball court, whereas we moved in thinking
Yeah.
we were getting something else. So we feel,
Yeah.
and that was our main concern when, like I said, councillors came knocking on my door, was worrying about development, because for us personally, and I don't presume to speak for anybody else or their feelings, and I respect everybody's feelings, obviously everybody has a point of view, but for us that was so key.
No, we appreciate you coming forward, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Good evening, Council. I'm Elaine St. Pierre. My address is 713-158 First Line East. I want to bring up a couple points that I wasn't planning on discussing, but now actually hearing this lovely lady speak, I too would like to, echo her comments that we also moved into a peaceful, passive parkland behind us with no intention of it becoming, I guess, what I'll refer to as Ontario Place North, and attracting more traffic, speeding, crime. And yet throughout this whole process, we were labeled NIMBYs by members of the opposition, I guess, that were lobbying to put all these amenities in there. So I concur with your statements, and I agree that we all moved here from somewhere. I don't think many of us that are in the Island Lake or the Fieldstone neighborhoods were born and bred in Mono. I think if we took a poll, I would say probably 99% of the people are not from here, but we all moved here for what we have now. That being said, certainly development needs to happen, but I think we need to be very cautious about what that development is. And that brings me to the drawings and the plan that is on the table before us now. And I kind of wonder on some of these issues, I don't even know how we got here. I am very much a methodical person. I have combed council minutes, agendas, every attachment, and I fail to find any sort of direction by council to the staff to include features like a disc golf course in Fieldstone, or a basketball court in Fieldstone, or lighting the proposed pathway and parking lot, or even making a 2-lane paved road from First Line to said parking lot. And I feel this is very much contrary to the duties, I guess, or the structure and the way that council is supposed to operate. I looked up today, the Ontario Municipal Councillors Guide from 2018 does state you are elected by your constituents to represent their views when dealing with issues that come before council. And one of your roles is to provide clear direction to staff. So none of that is happening here. Staff is given free will to suggest whatever they want, apparently, regardless of whether it follows consultant recommendations or public survey results. And I think a lot has been said, and yourself, Madam Mayor, mentioned it again tonight, that we've been way too long on this and we need to come to some sort of decisions. But I would question the path that we took to get here. The example of the I'll call it the 2-lane highway that's proposed to the parking lot right now. At the August 27th council meeting, when questioned why the Director of Recreation decided to suggest a 2-lane road versus the existing 1-lane roadway, her response was that when all the council and staff had attended the on-site meeting at the park on July 15th, when they all decided to leave at the same time, there was a bit of congestion and y'all had trouble backing up and getting by each other and you had to wait. So I would question this one instance being the motivation for deciding to change the plan and put in an item that was $126,000 to resolve a situation that will most likely never replicate itself again. Because I live near the park and I work from home and I have a very large dog that requires a lot of exercise, I don't think anyone in this room has more experience or viewpoint to what goes on in that park and how busy the parking lot is. Many of you on council have openly opposed making this a destination for outside communities, but as my neighbor there on Meek has just suggested, she's got it exactly right. Everything you're doing here is inviting people from outside of this community to come here, bypassing the CVC, entering through a back door, if you will, avoiding paying the parking charge, even creating a parkette in Fieldstone is going to dramatically reduce the parking that we have at Island Lake. And I would caution, I guess, before any of the items on the current proposed plan are even voted on, that you loop back around and really look at whether they truly express the desires and needs of the communities that you were elected to represent. Go back to the consultant's report. Go back to the surveys that you implemented. Go back to the town hall meetings and all the comments. None of them prioritized a desire for washrooms or parking and lighting. What was clear, however, regardless of what side of the tennis debate you were on, was a desire to maintain the naturalized area. And that is the area now that is proposed to house not only a parking lot, a 2-lane highway, and a double tennis court. So I think what we learned personally from attending the recent community safety and policing meeting is that the current police force has no appetite to patrol the parks to ensure our safety. And if you're not going to enforce bylaws, then I think council would be naive to think that creating a meeting place, like a parking lot that's a half a kilometer away from the road, and amenities on a piece of land that is hidden from view, is going to invite vandalism and crime. We've already seen it happening at the hidden dead end of Circle there at First Line. People being in the CVC well after it closes at 9 p.m. This one is very upsetting to me, and I don't even have children, but if I was the parents of these 2 little girls, I don't even know what I would do right now. Earlier, it was just last week that we were on our property, and my husband and I witnessed 2 young girls on bicycles. I would peg them at probably about 12 and 8 years old, that were being harassed by 2 carloads of young adult males that had been parked in the laneway for about 15 minutes with their music blaring, and the OPP did not come when called. I will state that many of your decisions were going to have long-term consequences for your municipality that extend well beyond your term of office. And I want you to be clear, because I just want to be clear, because I don't think that voting on which items are going to go and once the stuff is built, that is going to end your issues with this neighborhood and the amenities that you're creating there. These decisions will follow you, and you will be responsible for what happens to the community afterwards. So I would close by saying, not to be offensive, do the job you were elected to do, represent your constituents, and provide direction to your staff, not the other way around. Thank you.
Are there any questions from council members? Okay, thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Dino Ritako. I live at 15 Blue Heron Drive. I moved in last year, so I got in and not understanding what was going on. And I was neutral on the park. I was excited that we were getting a new park. Tennis not my thing, but I understand people like tennis, so I didn't mind either way. I'm not too happy with the lights, I'll be honest. I don't see why we need lights for the tennis courts. When the sun goes down, you go home. We didn't need lights for the volleyball court. Nobody complained. So I don't see why we need the lights since it's a naturalized area. Kind of a compromise. They get their tennis courts, no lights. When the sun goes down, you go home. That's how I feel on that. The problem I see with the new drawings is, like the previous lady was saying, it's all into the conservation area that we were told at the meetings it wouldn't go over that. And now suddenly it's all in there. And if you look at the picture, the first thing you notice is this huge driveway and parking lot. That is now the main feature of the park. And I don't understand that. I can't even see the park yet. Like, I don't see where the playland is. You have to look for it, but you can see the parking lot. And that huge cost. And then she mentioned little kids. I have 2, and we're lucky enough now that we actually have another one on the way, so I will have 3. I actually have 2 more, so I actually have 5. Now, the 2 that are big, they're 10 and 8, they can play on this parquet. But I was excited to have, and I asked for a toddler area. My 6-year-old, my 4-year-old, I have to lift them onto everything in our park. It is not for toddlers, for sure. We spent, as I looked at the drawings, over $700,000, and there's not an extra swing. There's not an extra toddler swing, nothing. There is nothing for my kids. They can go to the bathroom now, That's about it. There's an open field, so I don't understand. Like, that's a lot of money, and you didn't provide anything for the toddlers. Now, in Fieldstone, I don't know what they're putting in, but it says from 2 to 12. But if it's anything like what's here, that's not for the toddlers. It can't. And I know, I have firsthand experience. And I'm not saying, I think they deserve it as well. So there should be an area for toddlers in both parks, because I've been in that area and I've been in that subdivision. There's a lot of young kids there, and that's who we should be focused on. And I love tennis too, but you know, even if you save 100 and whatever the parking lot was, over 120,000, make it where it is, expand it a little bit and save that money. Put in a toddler area for them and for us. Wouldn't that make more sense to me? And then you're saving the conservation area. The tennis, you can just move in. There's nothing there but an empty field. I don't understand what the empty field is for. Is that for flying kites? I don't know. It's not a soccer field. It's nothing. So you have nothing but empty space.
It is an open play area that will be flat, so it could be used for
Flying a
football,
Oh,
soccer,
okay.
flying kites, whatever, tag team. Just
It
it's
seems-
open with no specifics.
Right. Okay. But
And that was trying to address that we were not going to be inviting teams from outside of our area
And that's
in
great.
order to rent. I mean, that was specifically why we asked for
Mhm.
something generic.
But I can tell you, for growing up, being a kid, and we lived near a park where we could drive in, that is a haven for hanging out. And they're not doing anything wrong, but there will be noise there every night as kids drive and have nowhere else to go. After everything's closed, they're going to come hang out. They're going to buy the McDonald's. They're going to hang out there every night. And you're going to provide them lights as well. So that's my focus on that. I see a huge parking lot. That's what I see now. So I would say focus back on the children if you can. That's my thing.
Before you go, because I've had to explain this to one counselor too who didn't understand the history, and I'm not taking sides on anything you said, but I want to explain something about the open area that we don't cut the grass. It's supposed to be wild. You are right.
Mhm.
For the last 2 years, there was a thought that we should leave it wild. Yes, the parking lot and the driveway now intrude on it. The point, though, that you probably don't know is that this town spent considerable money buying 60 acres on the other side of Island Lake. We sold off 2 lots in the middle. The result is we now have 57 acres on the north side of Island Lake that is all naturalized. It will be naturalized forever. So again, I'm not taking sides. I'm just saying, yes, we did lose some ground here, but we spent $800,000 on the north side of Island Lake. Now we sold off 2 lots for roughly 400. So net cost was about $400,000 to create a naturalized area that abuts Island Lake Conservation Area on the north side of the lake. You didn't know that, did you?
I did not know that.
Okay, you know it now.
So I'll just leave by saying again, when we look out now, we're going to see a road first and foremost. A parking lot and a road is the main feature now of that park. Not even the tennis courts, which I thought that would be the main feature, and it's not. It's that huge road and a huge parking lot. Right. Yeah.
Good evening. You make some interesting points about the toddler area.
Yes.
I think for your benefit and maybe for the benefit of others here, what I anticipate is once we've heard from everyone, there will be a process to consider the recommendation. And there will, of course, be amendments to that motion to adopt the recommendation. And I'm already hearing many comments that will be the focus of motions that I intend to bring to amend the plan, and I'm sure that other members of council will have their own views as well. But rest assured, there will be individual votes on specific aspects of the plan, up or down, and they may well be recorded votes. So there is a process, and your thoughts are probably going to be addressed in some of the amendments that I think you'll see this council vote on.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Tina.
Good evening, Council. Bill Litster, Manager of Conservation Parks with Credit Valley Conservation. Here tonight to talk about the Island Lake Family Park and to provide some lessons learned, what we're seeing on people accessing the park from different locations and parking lots. So our concern, we have a little bit of concern about the location of the parking lot and the number of parking spaces that you are considering. As you're aware, we've had some challenges with our parking over at the Home Hardware parking lot, and he has designated 12 parking spots out of the kindness of his heart. And we've made some we've gained some ground over there by people adhering to it. But again, this evening when I drove by there was probably 20 cars in his parking lot. So what we're finding, and also I just brought to the attention to Councilor Mantrick about parking on here Ontario Street for access to the conservation areas up those hills. So as visitation increases to the conservation area, they're looking for other places to park rather than the designated parking. Again, I don't understand why people have to park right beside the trail to go for a 10-kilometer hike, but unfortunately that's what they do. And I mean, your design here looks like you could incur the same issues that that people are going to park in that parking lot to mainly access the conservation area. Again, some things that we're seeing is that access for fishing, and people are now parking at the end of Huron Trail Street North to launch their boats, and I can see that will probably happen at this location as well. And again, prohibited activities at night. Again, as another person had mentioned, is that the police they don't want to go back in that far to investigate if something's going on. If it was out further, then it might be a different story. And another question I have is that at the beginning of this process, there was a question. I'm not a CBC planner, but again, I'm pretty sure that this is in a regulated area, and I'm just curious to see if council has vetted this proposal to our planning department to see what challenges or things that you might have to mitigate to get some of your ideas in place. Again, with the source water protection area, I don't know if that's going to affect any plans in there, but just curious to see if council has vetted this preliminary to our planning department.
When we first talked about whether or not we could split the parking lot north and south, and Mr. Dunmore did bring it to our attention that access at the north end was not ideal in terms of size of the laneway, and also the fact that it's close to the wellhead area. So we had already had that discussion, so then it was moving it down to the south, or we thought we could try to move it midway to lessen disturbance to Blue Heron. But again, we appreciate your input, and we'll certainly ask further when we finally do get down to the final decision making in areas.
Okay.
Yes.
Bill, are you having problems on your property with at night with people coming in at night?
Yes. I see them driving by at 9, 10, 11, midnight on the
Thanks, Bill.
Yeah. Yeah.
I understand.
Thanks. Yes. So, on behalf of CVC, yes, we have an extensive monitoring program at the conservation area where we have cameras out along the trail in various locations and trail counters, and it's recording what times people are coming in so that we can maybe do some of our enforcement patrols according to that. But yes, we are seeing some after hours activities on the property, anywhere from it could be just people passing through to go from one neighborhood to another as well. In all fairness, it's kids traveling from town, going through back to their homes over in the Island Lake subdivisions. But we have got pictures of people launching their canoes and kayaks in the evening.
Bill, assuming that somebody doesn't have a good reason for being there at 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock at night, have you ever charged anyone with trespass?
No, we've put out some prohibition letters because our enforcement manual wasn't at the stage that we could lay charges. So there has been a few occasions that we've worked with the OPP and issued prohibition letters, but we're just in the process. We're weeks away from putting a public service announcement out that we are going to start issuing tickets at the conservation.
And I assume that you and your colleagues are provincial offense officers,
That's correct.
so you have the authority to lay charges.
Yes, we do.
Thank you. And you don't have to worry the OPP over it.
Yeah, well, again, depending on the situation, the number of people, we sometimes bring the OPP in just to assist us if there's a big
Understood.
party. So,
I just wanted to carry on a little bit about parking for everybody's benefit. Parking has been something that we as a council have wrestled with. We realize that very strongly that this is not meant to be a destination place. It's meant to be for the people of these communities. That said, when we put out the survey, which was fairly detailed, we tried to get some information about driving, and some people are going to drive to there. And for example, if in soccer it was about 19%, and baseball it was about the same. For tennis it was about 15%. The rest were walking or taking bikes. So some people are going to drive, and so we don't know what we should do. Should we not do anything and just see what happens? And we know what will happen with a spillover. We'll rightly get complaints from people on the first line that people are parking there because that parking lot doesn't hold them. And so we have looked at various options. This is one option here. I have to agree that it has problems, but we have a feeling that we need to provide a little more space than the 6 or 7 spaces that we presently have. And so we're struggling with the best way to do that with the least environmental harm and with the least disturbance to the local neighbors.
okay.
Yeah, get your pen back.
Good evening. Our favorite subject. Paul Seymour, 713-158 First Line. We all know each other. Couple things. I don't want to repeat what some have said. I do want to echo some of the sentiments. I came back in January and asked for a noise pollution study, environmental assessment, and even some soil studies. I don't think we've done anything yet. So I concur on that comment. Councillor Nix, it's great that there's additional naturalized area on the other side of the lake. However, I don't think it's germane to tonight's conversation because we're talking about the space on the south side of the lake. And to a person in the room, in both meetings we held last spring, no one wanted the brown area touched. In fact, Sharon, your husband, went up and made sure we all understood the area we were talking about. Not against tennis playing. I am against tennis courts back there, as you know. I just want to remind you that only 13 respondents ranked it number 1 on what they wanted. 13 homes said that's their first choice of what they want. As it relates to parking, if 15% of 8 players playing tennis are going to come and park, that's 1.5 cars. I think we're in a great place. I suggested to Councillor Mangtalao, the current parking we have, if it better utilized, we can probably squeeze 10 or 12 spots there. By putting a second parking lot in, we're building an arc before the flood comes. Why don't we wait to see if the water rises and say, okay, great. I'll be the first person to call you and say, every weekend there's 5 cars parked in front of my house. Happens periodically, once a week for volleyball, a couple extra cars, gone. Season is over. I live beside it. I have never seen the parking lot full to date. I think one of the issues with it is it needs to be squared off, reshaped, perhaps move the sign a little forward, move the gates another 10 feet. I've measured it. There's easily 10 to 12 parking spots at the regulated 9 feet. The important thing is to pave it and put lines. That will give you the opportunity to best utilize the space. No disrespect to folks that drive in pickup trucks, but they do take up a lot of space when parked in an angle. And usually that's what happens, or the SUV comes in real quick, there's nobody there, and we just jump out with our toddlers, etc. A little bit of organization will go a long way to prevent the need from putting something in behind which none of us are a fan of. Last comment, because many of the things I had have been discussed, is I see in the proposal that the parkette for Fieldstone is sort of a phase 2. I'm hoping you change your position on that and that it's all done at the same time or it's first. Many of the people I see in cars that come to our neighborhood are coming from Fieldstone to use the parkette. They're bringing toddlers with carriages and so forth. They're too young to walk down. And I don't believe they should have to wait the extra year. I think you should try to do both projects at the same time, or it should be on the front end, in my opinion. And again, I think that will alleviate some of the parking concerns you may have. Appreciate your time. I know this is not an easy subject, but again, we need to consider the environment here, and that doesn't seem to be taken into account at this point. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Robert Mastrato. I live on the first line. I was here at the last meeting when we talked about community safety, and I want to bring up that point. One of the things I keep reading about the minutes and listening to my neighbors, we all talk about the fact that this park is intended for our local community, and that it's for our community, our children. We have 3 of our own, but I can't help but think that the way this is really being developed is really for bringing people from outside our community. And in my personal experience, and again, we've lived there for 12 years, I can tell you that in 2016, our house was broken into. And that was before anything was added, before any parking and any tennis courts and things like that. Our house is broken into, and what bothers me again, we also have a pool, and I can share with you my personal experience again. With 3 daughters and my wife, and we're in the pool, and a drone circles above us. A drone that hovers there and watches. First of all, I don't know if that drone is watching my children in the pool, or if that drone is being used to scope out my house. I don't care. Someone had the audacity to say that this development should be inclusive of drone flying. That's so ridiculous. As a resident, as a human being, we have children there. Why would you encourage anybody to fly a drone? So when that drone stood there until I flipped him the bird. And as soon as it did that, the damn thing flew away. So I'm gonna ask again, why would we want to add more parking, more possibilities for people just to hang out, to look at our neighborhoods? And I know I'm not the only house that's broken into. There are several. But you're just giving ample opportunity for the kinds of people that we don't want here. This is supposed to be our neighborhood. This is our children. We're trying to protect them, not invite a whole bunch of people just to have a good hard look at them, or good hard look at our houses and think, damn, I can spend hours trying to find out how to get in that house, or watch the patterns of those people as they come and go, or geez, they got some really cute kids. That is so wrong. And I hope we don't forget that. We're planning a community for kids and people, not for tennis athletes and things like that. And when I hear the percentages, we're talking about 15% of the people need to park there. 15%. What about the 85% that don't give a dang about the parking lot? You know, people can walk. People will walk. If there's a parkette in Fieldstone, they'll use that. But again, I keep coming back to the fact, what is this whole park intended to be? If it's for our community, great. Let's build it that way. I don't think we're there. Everything I read, everything I see, everything I hear just feels like we're just trying to invite more and more people. You know, it's hard to get my head around fundamentally what we're trying to accomplish. So again, from a security standpoint, from the safety of our kids standpoint, there's no need. And we live close to that park. I can tell you, I hear people in that park all night long. I've been personally calling the OPP. I've gone and looked and taken pictures of people having sex at the end of the road. And that's right now. That's not a park in a dark area in the back where no one can see them. So again, let's think about this, please. I'm asking you as parents, I know you have had children, you have families, so do we. So let's make some good decisions, please, and make sure that we take those things into consideration when we build the final plan. That's all I got to say.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Any questions? Sharon?
Not really a question, but is Bill still here? Where is he? Tell me about drones in the park. What are you,
In Island Lake?
in our, that's, yeah.
Yeah, so through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Martin, we have a no drone policy in the conservation areas right now. And again, there was some new regulations that just came in effect Well, very recent. I don't know if it was June that the drones now you have to have a license to fly them and they have to have the numbers and everything on it. But right now we don't allow recreational drones in the conservation area. We do allow them once in a while for special permits, but depending, it's more for science-based stuff that we're allowing, but no drones allowed.
I distinctly remember seeing a note that said this would be a great place, that field would be a great place to launch kites and fly drones. And I just don't see a purpose. I don't think people are getting licenses for these things. No one had a license for that one that's over my house. And frankly, I'd rather go the opposite way. This is not a place for drones. Families are here, children are here. Regardless of what the regulations are, this should just be an outright ban. We don't permit them.
I'm almost sure that we are going to say no to drones. Speaking for myself, I certainly would. And if you ever see one again, I'm a very good skeet shooter.
So are some of my neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council, for the meeting. I don't want to draw the wrath of the mayor here, but I'd just like to put an exclamation point on a few things that were said that are very important to me. So I am going to repeat some of the stuff that was said by my eloquent neighbors here. And the most important thing is that I don't think this park should be a destination. And I believe that making parking, to that extent, and lights will make it a destination. I especially do not want to see it as a destination at night. So as one of the neighbors said, when the sun goes down, maybe it's time to go home from the park. Those are important items to me. Tennis courts, and I have a question here for the council. None of this is carved in stone, is that correct? There's going to be a process with respect, because if tennis courts do come, I think there's some major concerns that we have to deal with respect to durability and design. And I would hope that there will be an opportunity to address those. Can you confirm that there will be an opportunity to address those aspects of tennis courts should they be approved with respect to durability and design?
Well, we do have experience with Mono Center and Cardinal Woods courts. The Mono Center, when were they put in?
Mono Center courts were built approximately 35 years ago.
And they've been resurfaced. So we do have a certain amount of experience in terms of design and proper maintenance, and of course having the resurfacing, and so just to help you with your comments.
Yes, okay, that's great as long as those are addressed. But with respect to design, it just has like a square fence around there with the lights and stuff. The town of Mono courts at Mono Center are fantastic design, because the tennis is like a social game too, and it's good to have the offsets of the fencing, and all the trees around make it very good for shade, because when you're playing a hot game, you switch every 2 games. It's nice to sit down in the shade. At the lower sun angles, it's good to have the trees so that you're not looking right into the sun. And I think that the Mono Center courts are a fantastic design, and that if we could base something on that. And if tennis courts are approved at the end.
And further to that, one of residents, Rod Yeager, has suggested that there should be some sort of shelter provided on court side, so that you're not out in the open, because Mono Center has their clubhouse, which is an added feature, but that came much later.
Right.
So again, and a lot of the cedars that were planted along there are significantly older and larger, and so they add all of that you need. So those are the kinds of things that we have to take into consideration if we were going to proceed.
Okay, before I take leave, can you confirm that there will be a chance to address like certain design issues like that, like the tree planting and the fence design after this meeting, or?
Well, we will be going into RFPs in terms of whatever projects are considered to be something that we want to pursue. And part of those things will be what kind of fencing, what kind of landscaping, et cetera, for any of those particular installations.
Okay, and will there be public input allowed for that?
Well, I mean, you know, in terms of what the project is, in terms of size, et cetera, the standard RFP process is that is a public document, goes out, any company can tender, so they are public documents, so that you can see what's being requested.
Right.
And if you have any questions, you can certainly, you know, contact staff.
Okay, so that wouldn't be too late, like if the, let's say it just comes up with a square, you know, unlike the mono center courts, then then public could make a suggestion that they be changed, and then, you know what I mean? I think it would be prudent to do all that before the you know, request for estimates go out, like to have input into the courts if they are approved, because.
Well, I guess part and parcel of the discussion as to how the RP is designed, there would be discussions at the Recreation Committee with any expertise of members on that committee. Staff has had experience in the designs, et cetera. If you have any concerns, I mean, you could also submit them. It's
Okay, that's
you
what
know,
I'll do. I'll submit, because like it doesn't look like we've had like too much.
no, it doesn't look like there's a lot of landscape or anything that's
Right.
been proposed. It was just sort of to get a configuration of where things were going to be placed. I mean, it's not set in stone. I mean,
Right.
when the time comes, if that is a project that we want to pursue, of course, the land will have to be investigated and grading, et cetera. To, you know, it may end up having to move so many meters one way or another if that's a project that we want to pursue.
Right, yeah. It is important to keep that as far away from the residents as possible, in my opinion. Okay, well,
Any questions from council? Yes?
I just comment on because the siting of the tennis courts is something that we have also thought about a fair bit, and actually I think this location is great. I don't play tennis, so I've talked to a number of people who do, and but if you ask them, what's the biggest problem with outdoor tennis? It's wind.
Right.
And so this site is in the lee. Our dominant wind is from the west northwest. This site's in the lee of a row of pine trees there, and it may even be down a little bit depending on how it's configured. And so it's a good site in terms of that. It's also a good site if we would do lighting. Nobody will see any of the lights in any places around, because the lighting will be used for LED lights, which are very directional down. So that's beneficial, and it just takes that activity away from the houses. So I think it's a pretty good site.
Yeah, I agree with you, Councillor Mechtel, about the location, but I'm going to respectfully disagree about the lights. Because I think the lights do invite after hours type of activities, and I don't think that's prudent for a park of that nature. So I respectfully disagree with that. Thank you very much, Councillor.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, if you'd like to come forward. Yeah.
My name is Priya Akula. I'm one of the family doctors working out of Orangeville and Grand Valley.
Okay.
And pardon me if I'm going to say something that may not be clear, but I'm 28 Headwaters Lane. I kind of walked into this about a year ago because my son's coach, Mike Soden, is my colleague's husband. So that's where I'll start. But before I go anywhere with this, I actually agree with the lady in white and the gentleman in the gray. I very much echo their sentiments, because I worked out of Orangeville first, and then we moved to 28 Headwaters Lane. When we were given the option of buying the property on one Headwaters Lane, I'm sure all of them know here, and then the 28, the reason we chose 28, because we knew that the development was going to happen across, and we wanted the conservation. So, and my children, one of them who is now 19 and my son who is 8, we have always felt safe where we are. They could take their bicycle rides, go down with their friends, go to the small playground that is the family park, And I very much agree with the people who are telling us here that right now the crowds that we are seeing, whether it's on the boardwalks or whether it is after hours, I'm not sure we are happy. Meaning, us on 28 Headwaters Lane can feel the change and the impact. And I would be up in arms and battling anybody or everybody if I were to see more development come in. And I actually very much agree with the Blue Heron and one First Line families here. Again, I might be a bit ignorant and slightly stupid in asking this question, but I think we have to go back and ask ourselves why we are doing this development and how or who are we intending this development for and how much do we need to develop. Because yes, we are a tennis family and we love tennis, but some things like what we heard today, the lighting, I'm not sure what type of crowd that would attract and how politically correct do we want to look or be, and bring in all kinds of fancy stuff and encourage outside elements which may or may not be good. I didn't walk in here with any intention. I just wanted to see and hear for myself where we are at. And I actually support the fact that we don't want too much development happening and then regret and try to correct it and walk backwards. My 2 cents on this.
So
I just wanted to make sure,
Would you be-
because I heard the lady say that
Yeah.
there is an opposition. Sorry, I'm smiling, but there is no opposition. Yes, we want tennis, but not at the cost of overdevelopment.
Yeah, okay. Would you be able to answer any questions?
Definitely.
Okay. Councillor Nix?
When you said you can hear the people on the trail, you mean the Vicky Barron Trail in the conservation area? You hear them from
No, I'm not suggesting that we hear them,
Oh, I'm sorry.
but
then I
these
misheard you.
people actually walk through the entire area, right? I'm trying to,
You mean they walk down your street?
yes. And we also, when we go on the boardwalk, right now we are seeing people who shouldn't be there.
You
for
mean the
example.
boardwalk in the Vicky Barron Trail?
Yes. And also, for example, where it will clearly say no fishing allowed, you'll see the type of people who will be, that I'm sure is nothing new to anybody here. And that has changed over the last 5 years. The 10 plus years that we have been here, we have seen the crowd change that walk into the conservation area. And I agree with the gentleman. You don't want to improve parking access and invite people outside of the community. You don't want to develop more. Sorry, I'm saying it very bluntly, but that is, again, whoever, like all of us who want the development happening, not at the cost of the conservation. You will see more outside elements coming in, and sorry to say this, 9 out of 10 will be not the type of element that we want to see there. Thank you. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Diana Vrolesdunk and I reside at 48 Meek in the Fieldstone community. And I'm just going to keep this very brief, but in my opinion, looking at the proposed recreational changes that you are going to make on both the First Line side and the proposal for Fieldstone, I feel like it's a little bit of overkill. I myself have 2 small children, a very young family, and I remember when Fred, you came to my door to ask for my vote, and we actually had an exchange. We talked about.
Did I get it?
Yes, you did, but we had a discussion about why Fieldstone was permitted to, have the development and not include a park in the first place. Because to me, this seems like a little bit of overkill. Being that I have a small family, my feelings is that we should just have a small parkette in Fieldstone and the current park should just be left alone. I think if we were going to do anything at all, perhaps expanding on the current parkette, removing the sand would be great, putting in some wood chips, that would be awesome. I never bring my kids there because of the sand, personally. Having a trail from perhaps that little parkette that would connect to Vicky Baring would be awesome. Very cheap. Just, even if it's just gravel, that would be awesome as long as the kids could ride the bikes and connect to the trail somehow. The parking there to me seems sufficient. The few times that I've been to that park, it was never an issue of, overcrowding or having to try to, navigate my way into a tight spot. Maybe putting the guardrails back just another, 10 feet or so could add a couple of spots, but really, I've never seen that park full. Like, I think maintaining the natural charm of that area, which is just having it, a perfect, as perfect as it is right now. It's beautiful. We go out there for the peace and quiet. We came here for the peace and quiet. My kids love basketball. They absolutely love basketball. Would I want to see a basketball court just behind our homes? I'm on the ravine side, so no, I wouldn't, to be honest with you. If my kids want to play basketball, I'll take them over to Athletic Institute, or I'll take them over to Island Lake School after hours, and we'll shoot some hoops there.
What about on the Fieldstone side? What about just a playground for children?
Playground for children would be awesome, and I'm wondering.
Because it'd be a lot closer to your home. Then you wouldn't have to go all the way across to the Island Lake Family Park.
It would be great, but I'm wondering, why would you pick that location? Why not beside, like at French and Benson, like
we
just
tried,
off to the
We tried a couple of
treatment
locations.
plants?
There was one at French and First Line. There is some space
Yeah.
there. It's just too dangerous to put kids with that traffic. There's one at the corner. Someone get me the street names right. Where the little we were going to have to spend $100,000 to put a base in there. So then we hadn't even thought of the place where it's now shown, but we all went for a walk up there and we said, slopes like this, there's just a field. So we picked it mainly because of the feasibility of putting something over in Fieldstone. That was the easiest place to put it.
Okay, well, if you scratch the tennis courts and the basketball courts and probably the parking lot and a lot of that extra paving, you may be able to afford to do that. Just a thought. I just don't see, it's kind of overkill, honestly. If the town of Mono wanted to have like a recreational area with a lot of those amenities, maybe we could look at some land that's not necessarily in a residential area, that perhaps the whole town would come on board and say this would be great. Have parking. Just a thought. Like I said, myself, and I know a lot of other families in the neighborhood with small kids, and I just feel like the thing that we're really missing is just a place for the younger kids to play, and some of the parents to kind of get together while they're playing, and the long walk to the parkette on the other side there of First Line. It is a long walk, but if we had something of our own just there, that would kind of solve the problem, and I don't think it would encourage a lot of outside unwanted guests, as some of my neighbors here would argue.
I'm just going to give you some background information here, okay? Because I don't disagree with some of your points. And when we first started thinking of it, in fact, there's a person sitting in the room who really pushed this. We wanted to make Mono Center Park the kind of destination park. It's the center of Mono, and that's where we wanted to fix up the flat surface, which we use as a hockey rink in the winter, fix up some things. Here was our problem. And because there's only got to be careful. There are people who live in Mono Center, but that is a park, and we have a pavilion there, and it's the center of the town of Mono. And we have a tennis club there, a great tennis club. Then we got some opinions, more than opinions. We got some very stern looks. It turns out that because the vast majority of the development charge money that we collected, which now stands at about $600,000, was collected from the Fieldstone development, that if we didn't spend about, I'm going to make the number up, 90 or 95% of that money down in the south end of the town, we'd be in trouble. So that's when we started to say, we've got to spend the money down in the south end of the town. I'm not disagreeing with your point that it would be great to develop, like put the bigger things, the soccer field, up at Mono Center. But that's the dilemma we had. If anyone else on council wants to contradict me or elaborate on that point, that's what has happened to the thinking in the last 3 or 4 years.
No, I understand. So how is it that Fieldstone was able to build this community without putting a park in?
the original agreement with the developer that started with Island Lake Phase 1 made an agreement with the town at that time to convey that 17 acres off the conservation area as the designated parkland.
That 17 acres is located where? Is that on this?
The Island Lake Family Park, the part that is goes from the back of the first line and Blue Heron into that point where the brown area is, etc. So you can see that on the map right beside Councillor Martin.
Okay, so being that Fieldstone was going to put in 3 phases of residential homes, like it was not a consideration the distance between where the location of the homes were going to be and this parkland, like for smaller kids. Usually a parkette's like in the
council
middle
of the day at the time that agreement was made before Fieldstone Brookfield was being considered in terms of what the potential development was going to be.
Mhm.
Through time, it was going to be a golf course. And that didn't go because the province changed the rules and we were not allowed to consider that kind of development. So then that's where it all came into being, where it was much more intensified development, and that's why the number of homes are there. But there was nothing else that the town could do because we already had the designated parkland area given.
Okay, and the 600,000 that you mentioned, you said majority of it came from the Fieldstone development?
Yeah, the
Yes.
development charges on each property, there's a certain charge that was paid on building of those homes. And so that goes in, it's divvied up between recreation and other services that are required in order to expand the development.
So
We can't spend we can't just say, well, here's $600,000, let's take it and put it into our operating budget. It legally has to be, it was collected for parks, it has to be used for park development. We could, I suppose, let it sit there for the next 100 years earning interest, but we can't do anything else with it except spend it on parks.
Okay,
And my understanding is we have to spend the majority of it in the south end of the town.
so let's take $100,000 of it and just put the park at the current lookout.
What do we do with the other 500,000?
You guys can figure that out amongst the rest of these guys, but paving the path along the back and maybe just expanding the parkette on the other side, I think would be sufficient, and putting a park in the Fieldstone development would, I think, make the majority of the homeowners happy. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor?
Just to the issue of parkland dedication versus taking cash. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Troutman, but I think at the stage of negotiating with the developer, the town has a lot of say as to whether it is willing to take cash and no parkland dedication, or parkland dedication and no cash. That's frankly something that can and should be negotiated at the very early stages of discussions with the developer. Is that correct?
Well, I wasn't here for that particular project, but generally,
Nor was I.
true enough. A key distinction for taking one for the other would be how the master parks plan or master parks rec plan, or an area specific plan as part of a secondary plan initiative, or even a subdivision plan would determine the need for the park, the land itself versus cash in lieu.
Mr. Early?
Yeah, just to provide some clarity as to how the parkland process worked. If you look at Cardinal Woods was developed with a regional park. I would call it a regional park. Each of the 4 phases that were built at Cardinal Woods, none of them provided specific parkland. So the first developer provided the land. The remaining developers provided the monies to build the park that's there. So it's one regional park. It has parking. It's got tennis courts. It's got a baseball diamond. It's right at the corner of Hockley Road and Highway 10. So that's how that was developed as a regional type park. The same concept that was being considered here when Mr. Bissinger developed the original Island Lake subdivision. He offered the 17, 18 acres of land as his parkland dedication. It was a significant over-contribution for the amount of land that's actually required for parkland. And the town received that thinking ultimately that would be the developed parkland for the Island Lake area, similar to what had gone on over at Cardinal Woods. That's the general background.
But I think in fairness, the kindness of Mr. Bissinger should be viewed as land that he probably couldn't build houses on. So, you know, it was great. We got more land than we were entitled to. But if you had to do this over again, I think the outcome might have been different. And if we ever have to do it again, I think that we're going to have to turn our minds to whether we start with the park in the first instance or whether we accept cash. And it could be that it's a combination of both. I don't know, but it's something. I mean, if we've learned nothing else, I think we're learning how we should be doing it and not doing it.
Thank you so much. Appreciate your.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Andrew Benici. I live at 38 Meek Avenue. I'm not as eloquent as my lovely wife, but I'd like to talk about some of the practical side of what I see for the what do we call it? We call it a disc golf course. We look over that, immediately over that, and I'm sure when they do an environmental study, they're going to find that that's underwater for a big chunk of the year because we look out on it and it is wet most of the time. This year in particular, I'd say it didn't dry out till probably late June. And I understand it's $10,000 to put 1 acre in there. I can't believe that they can actually level all that, get it smooth for $10,000 for 1 acre. I just don't believe how they're going to do that. It's going to be underwater. So I think it's completely impractical to put what I believe is basically a Frisbee park in there. As far as the basketball court, I think we all agree it's going to attract the wrong type of people there. If we're talking about putting a...
I'm sorry, I'm going to object to that. Saying that basketball players are the wrong kind of people is wrong.
Let me just say that again. I'm not saying that people that play basketball, what I'm saying is what will happen is you will bring people in from outside of the Fieldstone area. You're going to have teenagers there. We've all been teenagers. It's going to happen after hours. It's just not the right location for that. As far as a parkette for young children, I think I agree that's something that is needed. But for young children, we're talking young children, 6, 8-year-olds. We're not talking bringing teenagers in. The golf will bring the teenagers in, and so will the basketball court. And it will be late at night, and there will be more trouble, and there will be crime.
I'm sorry, I'm going to object to that. I have a real problem with saying teenagers are going to be a problem. Teenagers have nothing to do in this area, well, this area, right? But in that area, there's nothing for teenagers to do.
Okay,
So to say they're a problem, I know I'm speaking out of turn here, I take an objection to that.
Okay, and you're more than welcome to come up to the mic at the next available opportunity and state your case.
Yeah, just to clarify, all teenagers are not problems, but we know from experience you will see some of the wrong type of kids coming in there.
I'm not either agreeing or disagreeing with you. What I'm surprised at your statement is and listen, I'm not sure I'm in favor of that basketball thing either, but how could people, why would people come in there? There's no place to park unless you're going to park on First Line. I mean, would someone from Orangeville drive over there to park on First Line to go in there and play basketball?
How many basketball courts are there around in Mono?
Good question. I don't know.
In Orangeville? Many? Because they have nowhere else to go.
Sorry, I can answer that. Sorry, the high schools have basketball.
You come forward.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Question?
Thank you for the encouragement. I know I've had my turn. I'll be brief, but with dialogue comes additional question. A couple things supplemental my earlier conversation. I think it requires some clarity for everybody in the room. We have this 600K that came from the development at Fieldstone, and we all recognize there's a need for development in there and for improvement of Parkhead or wherever. I have found nowhere in any documentation, and I've talked to other communities to see what their rules are as municipalities, that yes, it needs to be earmarked for parks and recreation, but not within 1 kilometer of the residential site or anything. So I can't find anything that supports the 80% or 90% that we're throwing around. And I think we all need clarity as to what the rule exactly is. I'm not saying we don't spend money near there, because they do need some things. But it doesn't say that we couldn't spend $300,000 on tennis courts and make the Mona Tennis Club better. People get more court time. You've spent the money that's burning a hole in your pocket. And we alleviate some of the congestion at Island Lake Park that's causing some anxiety in the room. The road that goes in there is where deer run every October across to the farmer's field I live across. Now you're going to have a Yukon Denali driving up there, striking a child that's coming from the park because there's a road there. So it's fraught with some challenge, but my biggest question of the night is, I need to see or hear from someone, if it's not tonight, from clarity from even Mark, the 600,000, I need to see documentation that says it's all got to be spent exactly in the neighborhood, because I can't find it. And I've talked to Caledon and I've talked to Orangeville, and their rules are, yes, it has to be spent on parks and recreation, but if we get it from this area of town, we can spend it over here if we need a baseball diamond. So I imagine our rules are very similar. I just like to get some clarification.
Yeah, there's at least 2 documents that have been provided to council over the last 3 years that they're widely available on the website. So I certainly get it to you.
Does the state a ratio?
No,
like
what it did, and it does. You're not wrong. What we've told council is that we've calculated out how much was actually paid through the development charges by the landowners who bought into that community, the quantum that was spent in that community, and that morally, right, it should probably be spent down there to provide parkland purposes for the people who probably paid for it through their purchase price.
And I think we're in agreement on that question, Mark. My question really stems from that is, it wouldn't be wrong to put the tennis courts at the Mona Tennis Club if we have a desire to make that better and have more tennis court time. It's a win-win.
Well, we actually made that suggestion with that price. We were told at best we could use we could pay for 5%.
I haven't seen that. Okay.
Well, and again, what Councillor Lennox is saying, we've provided them with information on what the DCs were paid, what the DC count is, and what the parkland fees that have been paid generally across the community.
And again, I'm not advocating that we spend the money on roads or something else, parks and recreation, but my point is, I'm not convinced that the entire sum has to be spent within a 1 kilometer range of the Fieldstone subdivision, and I'd love to see the documentation that says that. 'Cause
I can certainly provide you what we've
and
provided.
it'll say
council.
a percentage of the funds
It doesn't say a percentage. It's actually provides a breakdown of what development charges were paid by
for
Island
parks
Lake,
and recreation.
by
yes.
Island Lake over the years, what the charges were at that time, what they were in that
But
year.
you could put a tennis court in Mono Tennis Club with that money.
In Mona Center?
Yeah.
If that was where council wanted to spend their money, what we've said is you've got vacant parkland here. These people have paid a large portion of that money.
Yeah, and you've heard from many of the residents. I don't think they want it, but they do want a few things, and I think you can placate both groups and spend the money wisely. Thank you.
I noticed that Peter Gibson sitting at the back of the room is starting to smile.
Good evening. Terry Carter, 17 Blue Heron Drive. Madam Mayor and members of council. I'll keep my comments short because I intentionally wanted to listen to the comments from my neighbors, and I've appreciated very much. And I want to just say for the record, I've been very impressed and encouraged by the dialogue which council has initiated with the residents. This was not in place last year. You've done an excellent job of ensuring that you're hearing from everyone. And I like the fact that there's an opportunity tonight for neighbors to come out to express. We may not all agree, but to have an opportunity, a forum in which to discuss matters is so important. So I'm not going to repeat things that have already been said. The letter which I sent focused on concerns about safety with the proposed parking area that's in the current plan with the two-lane road going into it being lit. Why, from my standpoint, our home could be impacted by that, and I'm very concerned about the potential for that parking area becoming a launching pad for folks and individuals to get into the backs of homes. But I'd rather focus on solutions. And one of the neighbors talked about the existing parking has some potential to be modified to provide for additional parking if the need is there. And I think it's a very good idea, just trying to adjust the parking to increase the number of spots, even having it paved so that you can put some lines in place, I think will go a long ways in order to accommodate. But it doesn't require that you have a two-lane road going in to the back of the play area, the field area, and going into what I understood was to be the protected area for purposes of parking. We don't need to turn Island Lake Park into Flushing Meadows. We can do better than that. And I would concur with what has been said. This is a park for the neighbors, and we have to be sensitive to all neighbors. That's absolutely important, but we do not need to turn it into a destination park. So my compliments and thanks to council for taking the initiative so that it's a decision by the elected people and not by staff. You're doing a very good job, so thank you very much for that.
Terry.
Fred.
I'm not going to disagree with anything you said, but there's one part of your logic that I don't understand. In your phone call to my house the other night and in the letter you've written me, you make the statement that the proposed parking lot will no doubt become a magnet for vandals to have easy access to the homes backing into the west end of Island Lake. Now, that's an assumption on your part. I'm not going to say it's right or wrong because I simply don't know. The part of your logic I don't understand is that if we keep the parking lot where it is and expand it, it apparently doesn't add to crime, and it's even closer to the fence line. So I don't understand how one parking lot would lead to more vandals and the other one apparently wouldn't. Can you explain that logical inconsistency?
So, Fred, let me help you. When you've got parking in the current location, that's up against first line. To the extent that there are police that are able to monitor it, there's better ability to be able to monitor it. Okay? If you take the parking and you have it on a half-kilometer road in the back area that is no one can see and the police cannot see, then that becomes an opportunity for individuals to go there. And I don't know what they would do, but I do know this. No, I didn't say that. Fred, I didn't say that they would be vandals. I said it could be a launching point pad for. Yes, it could be. But I don't know if they're going to come. See, Fred, you're trying to say to me that I'm making a conclusion. I'm raising a concern, all right? And a concern for safety. Thank you. Because the parking lot is further away, it's not possible for the police to be able to monitor.
They can't visually see it.
Correct.
There's homes in the way. Deputy Mayor?
Yep.
I liked your reference to Flushing Meadows. For the benefit of this group, and this may date me, it was the site of the 1965 World's Fair.
Thank you. And it's also the site of where the U.S. Open was won over the weekend by a Canadian. So we're delighted.
Not only a Canadian, but the first Canadian and the first teenager.
Absolutely. And we're delighted and very proud.
This is really one of the moments in sports history for Canada.
It is. It is wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I thought the line was here.
Oh, my apologies.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Amy Ornelas. I live at 50 Meek Avenue. I'm Amy Ornelas. I live at 50 Meek. I'm actually here to represent Nolan, my son, who I was playing with at the Island Lake Park a couple years back when we first moved into the subdivision. And he made the comment to me at the age of 5 years old that the park needed to be upgraded. And we immediately went home, and I believe we wrote we went onto the Mono website, and I think we even wrote something about his comments and some of the improvements that he wanted to see in the park. Primarily to the sand point, it's just not a safe park in general for the kids currently. So I believe that the park itself in its current state needs to be upgraded and modified and more safe for the children currently. So that's one thing.
What is unsafe about it now? Is it the people? Is it the geography? Is it what's unsafe about it now?
It's the sand, and we've actually found glass shards there too. So it's not. I think that you guys could possibly look at other municipalities. I was recently in the city of Waterloo, and what they've done there with their parks is pretty impressive. It's all wood chips. They have an interactive system for the kids where they're allowed to get the physical play of the park as well as the interactive. They can use an app on their phone at the park to get an interactive perspective. So I think that you guys just need to look at some of the other park options for kids, because it's the dynamic is changing for children, as we know. But as a resident of Meek, there are a lot of children in the community. They play basketball on the streets, and they don't have a place, a common area to go and play and even get to know each other. So the closest place is Island Lake Park, and it's a little bit far of a walk. I mean, it's not unmanageable, but it is a far of a walk. So, to Diana's sentiment earlier, we would have liked to have seen a park built within the subdivision. Unfortunately, due to politics and whatever, that's out of my realm. It didn't happen, but I think that that's the true need. And if we were going to do anything immediate, it would be to upgrade the current park. And the only request that Nolan had was, because we have our dog Ginger, and he was like, well, why can't I let Ginger off leash? So he was looking for like a dog-free or a leash-free area for his dog. But other than that, I would just say that, I think all in all, I think this is overkill. I don't think that all these things are necessary for the community. I think what is necessary, and I'm speaking on behalf of the children, is just a play area. They just want a park where they can go and meet each other. A lot of the kids in the street don't know each other. And quite frankly, there's a lot of people who speed down our street. So I'm concerned about them riding their bikes on the street. So that's where I stand. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
A comment and question. Your comment about the sand is very appropriate. In fact, our recreation director is making plans to change the sand at this time, so that's going to happen. When you said an upgrade, I'm trying to visualize it because we have to, be concrete. What were you thinking of?
I mean, it was, you got to look at the age groups from toddlers to your point, toddlers to like 10 years old. So every developmental stage requires a different physical activity element. And I just feel that the current park doesn't give enough of that. So maybe if there was monkey bar areas, like more for like the kind of 8 to 12-year-old range where they like to climb and they have the ability to do like a rock climbing wall type of thing, that would suffice that group. And then for the toddlers, just having like seesaws that are plastic in nature, or even a swing where the mom can sit in the front with her baby and swing together. Those are the types of things that just would be required for the park, and it would save you a ton of money just to do those things. Okay, thanks.
Let everyone have your job. I live at 46 Benson Avenue. It's Emilio Sestra. I don't know if you considered one other piece of land
on French Drive near the end of French Drive on the east side, where the commercial property is and where the sewage treatment plant is. Is there any possibility in that corner there that you could probably put a playground?
And we have that in mind for future development, but we have to wait until all of the beds are built for that plant.
Just a minute, do you mean on the north side of French Drive or the south side?
You have your plant here,
Yeah.
and then there's the culvert that goes underneath the road. Where the last commercial building is, there's trees there and whatever.
On the north side of French?
On the south side.
On the south
The south side.
Oh, okay.
Pardon me?
Same side as the sewage.
Yes.
See, once those beds are built, then that area could
But
be
it's not where the beds are. It's on the other side where there's a commercial building and there's trees and whatever on the other side.
Okay.
Maybe that you might want to look there to put this, instead of putting it there.
Okay.
That's an option.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you very much. We will note that.
Good evening, Council and everyone. My name is Kathy Moisovsky. Thank you for this meeting. We oppose the location of the parkette behind Meek Avenue. I'm going to approach in a macro community way. 32 Meek Avenue, sorry. I'll be approaching my issues in a macro, community, and micro individual perspective. I just want to begin. I looked up the definition of parkette, and it says a small park usually open to the public and containing amenities like benches and children's play facilities. But unfortunately, that doesn't align to what's being presented by the proposal here. So I understand, as per the memos, that parks are part of cost of the quality of life, and I get that and I respect that. But at what other people's cost of their health and well-being do we have to pay the price? So my first comments is the macro community. First of all, safety. For example, we're afraid that there's going to be an increase of crime. Already, we've had that in the past because of easy access to our houses and may cause further break-ins. Increase of crime can lead to higher property and car insurance payments and possibly devaluing our property and businesses. B, wrong crowd, possibly bringing drugs and hanging out late at night. C, if passed, will there be bylaws, i.e. park closed at 9 p.m., who will be enforcing this parkette? D, because it is in the middle of an isolated, secluded area, what about the priority 1 responders? Will they have difficulty of getting in seconds count and priority 1 moments? E, I've noticed a lot of coyotes, so that's a danger to children and others, equals liability for the town of Mono and others. F, water flooding. I have noticed when I walked, water flooding at the back. So I've noticed that the parkette, the area behind me was closed down at a certain point because of water flooding, I believe it's called. So that's also concern to health and safety and liability for the town of Mono and others. My second point on a macro level is noise pollution for residents who paid a premium for their homes as we did, i.e. dogs barking, increase of noise due to higher traffic. 3, light pollution for residents who paid a premium for their homes. And I will, Mr. Nix, look into that, where I did see there was going to be lights built in the basketball court. And the basketball court, I'm pretty sure I read it somewhere, but I will get that to you. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure I read it somewhere. A huge issue, I went canvassing last night, environmental issues. Town of Mono, has the Town of Mono done an environmental risk assessment report? If yes, please provide it. If no, please do one. We have to consider the wildlife, i.e. frogs, bees, plants, and fauna. It also may give the concerns on a safety level may also give the town of Mono a reputation and our community. On a micro level, for individual homeowners, as myself, again, safety and security issues due to higher traffic. My dad and I moved here. My mom passed away. We moved here to a quiet area. That was one of the selling points. The Brookfield representative said there's nothing going to be built. I had asked her 3 times. We paid $90,000 for a premium to have that peace and quiet. It will be the last house before my dad passes away. So we really bought that house for that beautiful peace and quiet. Again, noise pollution and light pollution. So a few questions, and forgive me if they're being repeated. Has the town of Mono adhered to provincial policy statements set out by the province? Yes or no? If not, can we get a copy? If you did get a copy, as per Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry. 2, I spoke to a lady from the environment today, Marcel, and she has asked me to ask council Has the town of Mono spoken to the province to have environmental assessment done to be in order? We have to consider impact on wildlife. If not, we may have to get a species at risk assessment involved. So I'm going to be calling the provincial authorities of environment to confirm tomorrow. And this is a very big question. I think you spoke to it, Mr. Nix, and a lot of my residents, I went canvassing again last night, and one of my neighbors, she actually won the argument. I was kind of different on this. Why did we allow Brookfield not to build this park? It has created chaos for our sister neighborhood and our neighborhood. So that has been a big problem within our community, speaking to others. And we have to think, as Mr. Creedman said, we have to think about this in the future to prevent such chaos. Because our sister neighborhood's we're going to get hurt, they're going to get hurt. We're not going to be happy either way. Another thing was, from my understanding of the reports, it was going to be built near Benson. And I strongly believe that it's better access for priority 1. And why have built the Fieldstone on first line, and then you have another park so close to it? Why not spread it out where the pergola is? And I understand the retaining wall and what have you, so I get the cost of that. Will there be landscape berms in the Fieldstone Parkette? I know that there's one for the Island Lake, but not for the one proposed for behind us. So landscape berms are not on the diagram. When I looked on it, it's on page 13 of the memo from to the town of Mono from Kim Heaton, dated August 19th. On page 15, there's no landscape berms for Fieldstone Parkette, and we want to know why not. That will help with noise reduction. And can we not build a retaining wall behind Meek if possible? Again, that's probably cost, that's probably no. And we strongly believe, again, like my other residents and neighbors, that a lot of money is spent overkill. It's being spent frivolously. And I just wanted to know, I think we spoke about it briefly, I still don't understand fully how it works. Why do we have to spend it on all this recreation? Can we not put it into police, education, other activities that could help our quality of life in our neighborhoods? That's a really big question. I think a couple of the council have discussed that. I still am not very clear on that. And can we not create a garden or create a business in the Island Lake to generate that money to keep, like, build maybe a little general store, create a business for the future. And I understand that is a proposal. It's not been approved yet. That's been already addressed. And lastly, because I understand that this has been changed from Benson to behind our houses recently, that's been a recent change. Can we rebook another meeting in the future to give us time to speak to council, to get proper guidance, to know our rights and recourse as to the parkette being put behind Meek Avenue? That's it. Thank you for your time. Any questions?
But just to clarify, the development charges that are being quoted as available for recreation services,
Right,
is specifically development charges for recreation.
right.
There are also other development charges that were collected to deal with the other roads and
Right.
other issues that the town has for infrastructure.
So it's mandatory that it has to be spent on recreation. Is
It
that correct?
has to be spent on
So
recreation.
where does that say, though? Policy, law? What is it?
It's part of the development charges bylaw.
Okay, so I got to look into that more bylaw. That's what I want to
Yeah.
know. Okay, perfect.
So that's the what they consider to be hard services. Now, currently, of course, the provincial government is changing the rules.
Okay.
And so development charges for recreation, library,
Right.
Services are being changed into, correct me,
Community benefits bylaws.
Right, like at risk and seniors. I would love to see that money go into that, into those.
So
type of things.
that's a totally different requirement now. We're
Understood.
not 100% sure what that's going to look like. We're waiting for all of those rules and regs to be.
And it probably doesn't affect past elections.
Right.
They reflected in their bylaw, and you correct me if I'm wrong, their bylaw had to follow provincial law. Am I correct?
Yeah, I was going to suggest, Kathy, you go through the Development Charges Act.
Yeah, I know I'm not very clear on that, so forgive me if I am not very clear on how it works. It's new to me. But I do really highly suggest that if this ever happens again, a development comes to the town of Mono, please really consider it, because it does cause a lot of anxiety. We purchased this house with Dad to give him the peace and quality. And so we respectfully ask in future to really consider that, make it mandatory that they do build the parkette. So it, prevents people from being, both our sister community, neighborhood, and ours as well. It just creates a lot of chaos. Okay. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
again. Hi, my name's Genevieve Miata. I live at 2 Island Lake Road. Oh, I'm so disappointed. I take great exception to the fact that people are saying, oh, the teenagers, let's give teenagers a break. You know, because you build a basketball court, that doesn't necessarily say it attracts the wrong people. Lots of great people play basketball. And I've heard in here lots of people talk about little kids. What are we going to do for those teenagers? They need independence. They need to not be on electronics. They need a place to meet their friends. Let's go play tennis. Hey, do you want to go play tennis? Like, let's get outside and be active and have fun. Let's go pick up a game of basketball. The fact that people think this is going to bring crime is a part of society. It's been part of society for ages. That's a fact of life, okay? Yes, it may bring crime, but we don't know that for sure. We don't know what's going to happen. As far as the park is concerned, I've lived here for 11 years. My kids are 9, 11, and 13. They have gone to that park since they were 2 years old, the oldest, and the rest were babies. We've never had a problem. They've loved that park. It's a playground. The only problem is, as somebody said, is the swings. We need more swings because I have 3 kids. They were always fighting over the swings. The other thing I don't know about the parking lot. I'm not sure we need a parking lot. I liked Paul's idea of the paved parking lot where it gave people lines to park in. I thought that was a great idea. People parking there to bypass fees to enter the conservation area. There's so many places to park. You can park at the end of First Line. You can park on Hockley Road. You can park at Home Hardware. So I think that's a nil argument because you can park in all these other places to bypass fees. I would really like to see something for teenagers. I would really like to see something path connected because as my kids I've gone to Island Lake every day when my kids were little, and pushing that stroller to get to the trail is not fun. And even a child riding a bike over the grass, that's not fun. But I really would like people to stop being negative towards teenagers. Teenagers are great people and they turn into fantastic adults. And we need to promote them to become independent, self-thinking adults and not keep them in a bubble. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hello.
Actually talking in turn this time.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Like she said, it really bothers me. I'm just going to say I agree with her. Teenagers are not bad. Oh, sorry. Brian Rasmussen, 17 Headwaters. I've been here a long time. I'm pushing 15 years now, not as long as some probably, but longer than most. When the new development was supposed to be a golf course, which is what it was promoted not only by the developer, but by the town. And we called because honestly, I don't trust developers because as we hear from people here, they're not always truthful. Okay? So we checked with the town who also said, yeah, there's a design for a golf course. So we bought thinking that. So now when it changed to all the houses, I get why you are upset that something that was never even in their plans is behind their houses. Kudos to whoever thought of a frisbee golf and for basketball. That never came up at the meeting I was at the other place that I can remember. So that's a great idea. I would say whether it stays there or not, I would move it to the park. The part that everybody calls the brown part was a developer giving it to the town to be developed as a park for the people in that community. I paid money to have a park close by. The reason Mono Center is a destination is because nobody lives there. You have to drive. Most of the town, I'm assuming, is not very close to Mono Center. Okay? The fact that a park, and I really like the design, and I don't know who did it or how the input from here, but it looked like a lot of thought went into it about the lower lights. The courts are back out of the way. They're far away from all the houses. I think it's a great plan. As far as the parking goes, when I used to play volleyball, we used to play beach volleyball in the court. There were never enough spots. And people at the time were complaining, everybody's parking on first line. How come everybody's on first line? How come cops aren't coming and ticketing them all, right? You need a parking lot that's big enough to hold people who are coming to play. Okay? Putting it where it's at allows people to get to the whole park easily. I think that was a great idea. Whether it's an asphalt road or a dirt road, I don't know that it matters. I understand why you'd want an asphalt one. But I would say if you take some of the fieldstone stuff, move it down to that one, it helps what you're saying. That was never designed as parkland from what I understand, if that's true, Mr. Early. That fieldstone stuff was never given as parkland. No, I know, but it wasn't a developer saying, here's some land for a park. Right. That developer gave us all that land down at the bottom for a park. I think that's where the park should be. Okay? I would maybe build something small. I would take the money from there, build a decent kids play area, because that is pretty small. And if you do have, on the Island Lake one, yeah, it's not a very big one. I would build a nice, decent sized one that people in the community are going to come to. People aren't going to drive from Orangeville to come to a park here. They have way better parks than we have. They have way better parks than this is going to be. Okay? People aren't going to drive all over the place to come play on a half-court basketball. I prefer to see a full court, because then I can get my sons and their friends and go and have a game of basketball. You can still do that in a half court. People aren't going to drive a long distance to come play on a basketball court, one in Mono, when Orangeville has them all over the place. I bet every school in Orangeville has basketball courts outside. They do in Peel. I'm sure it's no different here. I think it's a brilliant plan. I think it's been way too long going over and over this, and really only started talking about it recently. That money's been sitting there a long time. That park should have been built by now. I think you should just go ahead and build it, whether you decide that smaller one stays or you use some of the money and leave something small there. Most of the people here are probably not familiar that, was it French Drive and First Line? That was supposed to be a little strip plaza, right? It wasn't meant for a parking lot, or a park. It was supposed to be a little strip plaza. They talked about putting a Max Milk in there and a sub, something like that, a couple things like that. That's what that area was for. Okay? Luckily, they didn't do that. I would agree with that. But I think we need to get the park. That brown area should not be sacred land, I don't think. It's a park. I get the people who are on Blue Heron don't want stuff going on behind it. And I talked to you, and I'm sure you forgot it, something at the fairgrounds. I'd like to see a bike path through there with features on it, some rollers, some different things like that. That's what the kids are going to be playing on. The idea of this park is not just for little kids and maybe what people think are adults who are the only ones they think are going to play tennis. I think you need stuff for the kids. Tennis courts, the kids will play on. Tennis court, or the field, kids will play on. I think it's a brilliant plan myself. And I think that, again, if you decide to leave that, I can see why people would be upset, because that was never meant to be there. Anybody who bought in Island Lake, at least, knows that was parkland. Because even when we were told the golf course was going to be there, we knew that was parkland. That's not changed. That's the only thing constant in all of this, is that chunk of land. I think you need to get going. I think there's been enough back and forth and back and forth. And I think we need to lay off the teenagers. Sorry, that's my soapbox.
Okay, thank you. It's the dissenting opinion in the room, I understand. Is there anyone further that wants to come forward and make comments? Yes.
just want to quickly say, I think my husband started off by saying he wasn't as eloquent as me, and I think he went on to prove that. Because I just want it on record. My husband, we had 4 children, you know, one of which is still a teenager. He loves kids, and I don't think it meant to come out the way that it came out. So I just want that on record, because I don't want neighbours, you know, honking at number 38 when they drive past, because he actually does. And we totally get what everybody's saying. You know, I think everybody's so valid in their points, really. So anyway, thank you.
Sorry, there's something like that. You need my name and everything again? Brian Rasmussen, 17 Headwaters Lane. Well, I forgot to add, and this was actually my wife's opinion when I talked to her about the last meeting we went to. Having lights and a lot of people around actually discourages vandalism and break-ins and stuff like that, because there's too much. The reason schools have lights on around them, coming from the school board, is to keep people away from doing damage to the school. It makes everything visible. It works great. We don't have any vandalism at our school or any of the schools around mine.
Brilliant. It also helped that the guy take the wheels off under that car, like.
Okay.
Pardon me?
In places where they sell cars, now it's all lit up and they can go in and take all the.
I can tell.
So,
Sorry.
okay, thank you for your comments. So at this point, if there's no further comments, I think we're going to take a 10-minute recess to stretch, and we'll come back at this.
Lake and Fieldstone subdivisions. And whereas the Island Lake Fieldstone survey had a 31.6% response rate, that's 155 responses, and these respondents indicated 65.8% ranked a north-south pathway as one of their top 4 choices. That was 102 out of 155 responses. 99.4% indicated that someone in their household would play tennis if a tennis court were built. That was 154 out of 155 responses. 91% indicated that the children in their household would play soccer in the park if there was a playing field. That was 141 responses. 66.5% indicated that their children would play baseball in the park if there was a playing field. That was 103 responses. 66.3% of the households indicated that they would picnic in the park if there were suitable facilities. That was 63 out of 95 responses. Some people didn't respond to that question. 80.6% indicated they would use a small park with benches and a children's play area. That's parkette we've been talking about. That was 83 responses out of 103. Be it resolved that the town of Mono has now made a reasonable effort to consult with all of its residents. 2, that in consulting with its residents, it has determined that the majority of Island Lake Fieldstone residents want some development in Island Lake Family Park or in the Fieldstone subdivision. 3, that council accepts the staff plans for parks and parkettes in Island Lake Family Park and Fieldstone subdivision in principle, this is his handwriting, with the details to be determined at a later date. That's the end of the motion, Your Worship. In other words, just to explain to the audience, it's basically saying we have consulted with and heard from our residents, and we are accepting that plan in principle, but we leave to a later date some of the actual details. That's the motion that's on the floor, Your Worship.
Okay, so Deputy Mayor?
I have some difficulty with leaving to a future date the details, and I'll tell you why. There are things that we've heard here tonight and we've heard through this entire process that I do not believe will have 3 out of 5 members of council support. I think they are issues that we can discuss here and now, and we can either modify the plan or remove certain things from the plan so that everyone here goes home tonight knowing that certain things have been addressed and dealt with. This is far too open-ended for me with respect to the mover and seconder. I have no difficulty with agreeing with it in principle, but the notion that we get down to the brass tacks at a later date simply prolongs this process. And I have prepared a number of amendments to any motion that would adopt the report, and I would like the opportunity to move those amendments tonight.
Okay, so the motion has been put forward. Are you prepared to put any of your amendments forward at this time?
Certainly.
Then, yeah.
I'm looking for a seconder, but I'm going to deal with some of the low-hanging fruit first. That any road within Island Lake Family Park be 1 lane wide only, and that only high-quality granular materials be used for any new parking lot, and I have specifically said new parking lot, paths, and driveway. We've heard a lot about the issue of parking this evening. I have further motions that deal with the issue of parking and the size of the parking lot, but I think 2 lanes within that park is completely unnecessary. There is not enough traffic to warrant it, and indeed, if we adopt the notion of expanding the existing parking spot, there should be no need for a road within the Island Family Park, period.
Point of order. I'm just unclear. Are all these words part of the amendment?
No, I'm explaining the background of my amendment. So it's 1 lane only, and only high-quality granular materials used for any new parking lot, paths, and driveway. Okay, do I have a second?
Seconded by Martin.
On a technical point, were you proposing that as a standalone amendment, or were you asking that to be a friendly amendment to the motion I put on the floor?
I don't think it's a friendly amendment. It's a standalone amendment.
Okay. So in other words, we're getting into the actual plan itself by having amendments put forward because you have a number of them. So, Councillor Nix.
I'm sorry, Rob. Go
Uh,
ahead.
I don't have any problem with the amendment. I don't have any problem with dealing with those details tonight that we can deal with, rather than leaving them to a later point, later time. I have a little concern for what you're referring to, because when you went on to elaborate, you spoke about the possibility of not having a parking lot in the center, but having an expansion of the present parking lot. So I'm not quite sure how your amendment allows for that as an option, because I think it's a good option.
I use the wording any new parking lot would utilize granular. I guess the possibility that a motion to expand the existing parking lot would not be successful, and that we would be back to either the center of the park or maybe at the south end. I was just signaling that I do have motions with regard to the size of parking lot, and maybe I should have started with those first, but I wanted to start with the issue of the 2 lanes versus 1 lane, and the materials to be used for paths and any new parking, and of course the any road that is necessary. And I was just expressing the view that I don't think a road is necessary at all. The paths that are contemplated are 3 meters wide. That's 10 feet. Those are very, very generous paths.
Okay, we're getting into procedural complication.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to raise. It's not that I may be okay with John's idea in the amendment, but the problem is procedural because I wanted my motion to be very general to say we accept the plan as developed by staff and we'll work on the details later. And now, in fact, what the amendments are doing those details. My preference would be, but I'm not a procedural expert, is to put my motion on the floor to a vote. Once that's done, and depending on how long you want to stay here tonight, we could then start working on the details. But I don't see them, John, as amendments to this motion.
Thank you. Not enough mics on. So, and I do agree with Councillor Nix that this is going to cause procedural concerns. So is there any way that we could get you to agree with the existing motion that he has put forward in terms of if we modify the last statement so that it says in principle with details to be determined, period?
Well, it would have been neater, I think, if it simply said in principle, period. Because then we could introduce a succession of amendments to change the plan. Again, well, I do consider them amendments, and I think we do a disservice to the public by trying to do this in two steps, and maybe not even second step tonight. I will not be supporting a motion that adopts this plan in principle. Full stop, period, and I will ask for a recorded vote.
Okay.
I don't support it in principle.
Okay. Call the question.
All right. So with that, call the question.
It has to be
Recorded vote.
This is on the amendment. Whoa, no, we got a motion on the floor.
We got two motions on the floor.
We have two motions on the floor. It's the first motion. The motion precludes. Goes first. Right? It's been, but you gotta vote.
Did you have something? Well, he called the question.
Give us a second.
Because they both need the amendment must be
Well, Sharon did second.
commit the motion to a vote.
Because it's whether or not it is consideration, whether or not they do it. So I'm just thinking all of it is can't.
So I think to move it to a vote. I mean, to commit.
I think we're all bored. So we're going to go back to the first motion and see if it passes. If it doesn't, then we can continue on with first further ideas.
If the motion passes, it doesn't preclude a succession of new motions.
The amendments.
Yeah.
So you have two resolutions on the floor, right?
Two motions on the floor right
So
now.
you're asking to bring the first motion to a vote.
Yeah, that's been called.
Do you need it reread?
No.
Okay.
So we so the last line is
The last paragraph, that council accepts the staff plans for parks and parkettes in Island Lake Family Park and Fieldstone subdivision in principle with details to be determined at a later date.
At a later date, it's not tonight. Okay, I'd be glad we came to leave.
Or
Stop-
do you want it,
stop
do you
at
want it to
principle.
stop at principle?
right.
Okay. So I'll call the vote on that. Councillor Nix. Councillor Martin. Councillor Magdalo. Deputy Mayor Creelman.
No.
Mayor Ryan?
Yes.
That resolution is carried.
So now,
It's not an amendment now, it's a motion.
yeah, the motion, right. Okay. You are, I'm not sure, it could be volumes. Okay. So,
Okay, so back to my granular motion. So this is a new motion. And that any road within Island Lake Family Park be 1 lane wide only, and that only high-quality granular materials be used for any new parking lot, paths, and driveway. Do I have a second?
okay. So my question would be to staff, is that going to be enough for maintenance vehicles to get in and out in order, like porta potties or doing whatever grading that's required for road maintenance or gravel maintenance?
I believe so, yes. It will be tight, and obviously when we're coming in, we're not gonna have any other vehicles on the roadway.
Right.
And I guess that also depends on where you go beyond this resolution.
Okay, any question? Yes?
It's a question, but I suspect we can't answer it. John and I sit on the community task force, safety task force, and we asked the OPP specifically about this park. And if we're prepared to pay for more policing services, they are quite prepared to patrol it. I'm just not sure, John, would it cause them any problem to drive in there on a 1 lane road? It probably wouldn't, but that, you don't think so? Okay. Well, I suppose.
The laneways that are contemplated, if I'm not correct, Kim, are 3 meters wide. Yeah, the pathways, right. Okay. So my point was that I don't think we need a road in there at all. And in fact, on the drawings, there's a pathway that parallels the proposed roadway. So it's almost redundant. I'm motivated in part here because of the cost of all of this. This is a very, very expensive proposition. We're looking at spending some $783,585 in Island Lake and $259,820 in Fieldstone, which is basically all we've got in terms of accumulated reserves of one kind or another. So I see this in part as a way of reducing the costs of the total project.
And just for information purposes, I did go out. Thanks, Les. I did go out there today and measured the present roadway going into the park, going in from the first line is 11 feet wide. The curb stop is 12 feet wide. So that's basically what we would be staying at then, is the present one is 11 feet. Am I correct in that? And that's what you want. The parking area is 30 feet by 75 feet. And then once you go beyond the P gates, it's 8 feet. Those are the present measurements.
Well, in other words, it's close enough to 3 meters.
It's a little larger than 3 meters right now.
Okay, but not by much.
But not by much.
Okay.
By about, what is this?
Okay, Councillor Maitland.
So John, if I understand your motion, it's to decrease the roadway from 1 lane to 2, or from 2 lanes to 1 lane, and it doesn't reference the need for the roadway because we haven't considered whether we're going to move the parking or not, and you're considering that.
Yeah, I
So
think
shouldn't we consider the parking first?
that would be my next motion.
I think it should be
I
first.
just wanted to get the issue of the building materials out there first, and second, in the event that my motion on the parking location fails, and we're back to what he's contemplated in the plan here, I wanted it to be clear that it is a one-lane access to that parking and not a two-lane. So it's a little horse before the cart, but my next motion will deal with the issue of the location of parking, and that should negate the necessity of having any roadway other than utilizing a path in Island Lake.
Okay, I'm comfortable with that.
So if there's no further discussion on the motion, and I'm sorry I didn't write the motion down, so I'm hoping that staff has got it all complete. You're good? Okay. So I'll call for the vote. All in favor? That carries. Next.
Well, somebody else can jump in and
No,
do
go
this too.
ahead.
My next motion, and I listened very carefully to Paul Seymour, and I appreciate his suggestion, and that it impacts him most directly. But I think it is preferable that we use the existing parking rather than creating a new large parking area in any other part of Island Lake. So the motion is that the existing parking area be squared off and paved for no more than 12 parking spots clearly marked. And then by way of explanation, a path could connect the parking area to the other amenities within Island Lake Park. In other words, we would not need a road. So do I have a seconder?
Seconded by Martin. Discussion?
It sounds to me like, John, you're thinking that we wouldn't have a path until we get to the end of the parking area, and then the path to go from there. Why did you choose 12?
I chose 12 because I cannot, I do not know where 20 came from. And I think that the area next to Paul's can, as he's indicated, could accommodate between 10 and 12 if it was properly re-engineered. There was some numbers earlier in the meeting as to how many cars would be attracted with tennis players, and that's presuming that no one's walking. And this is supposedly a neighborhood park. I think that the parking is desirable where it is because it can be observed from first line and does not present the security issues that parking elsewhere in the area would.
Councillor Martin?
Could I just add that it also takes the parking out of an area that may be environmentally sensitive? We don't really know the answer to that yet.
Councillor Nix?
Yeah, I could live with this, and I do agree Paul's comments make some sense. My only concern is the way Kim had designed it now, okay, which is, I admit, a much longer drive in. It would have to be single lane now. But then it allows people to get within a very short walking distance of the tennis court, the playing field, and the picnic shelters. So my concern, I'm not sure there's anyone that can answer this question. If we make everyone park at the south end of this park, is that going to be a problem for people who want to go into the picnic shelters or who want to go all the way down to the tennis courts? And I'm looking at Kim, but I suspect no one can really answer that. It's difficult, but that would be my concern with this suggestion.
I like the suggestion, and I did measure it off, and you could get 12 in there quite nicely. We probably need some support on the south side because it gets a little narrower as you go in, but that's fine. It looks, Fred, like the parking would be central to everybody if it went all the way into this, where it's on the map at the moment. And yet it's a really a major, to my way of thinking, it's a major, almost an insult to the environment which we don't need. And I think that, if I go to picnic and I know I have to carry something a little ways, I'm going to arrange something so that I can carry it. I'm going to have a basket or something, or a bundle buggy or something like that. So I don't see it as a problem. This is a park that most people say they're going to walk to, and to walk a little bit further into, say, the area for the tennis, I don't think is a problem. So I support this as an improvement over what we presently have.
I just point out that by eliminating the necessity of an interior two-lane paved and granular driveway to parking lot, we save $126,850. And I'm sure that the re-engineering of the existing parking area will be a lot less than the $28,500 that is contemplated for a granular parking lot for 20 vehicles.
Okay, is there any further discussion on the motions on the floor? Seeing none, all in favor? Okay, we've got, so you're good there, Mark? Next.
I'm happy to see.
Drive on.
Okay.
I'd be happy to make a proposal.
Sure.
Let's just sit back. We've heard quite a bit about the perceived impact of the development in the Fieldstone area. And when we went around, I think all of us went around knocking on doors and asked what was needed. Quite frequently, it came up as some type of a children's play area that I can walk to, and that the one over in Isle Lake is too far. And so we've looked at 3 possible sites for that. There's concern, I think, and I understand this, for something that's going to be in your view or your backyard. But of the 3 possible sites, the intersection of Fun and French, the by Benson by the pergola, or this site, this one seems to be superior in a number of ways because it is reasonably central. We don't have a lot of infrastructure that we have to do to put it in. The one on Benson, we need about $100,000 worth of base to be created. So I favor it there. However, I never heard any requests for basketball or for Frisbee. And maybe if we'd asked that question in the survey, we'd have got some feedback, but we did have an open-ended survey, and you could put that down if you wanted. My motion is that we would approve the parquet in its present location, absent the Frisbee golf, absent the basketball, absent the covered protected area. We don't have that in other areas. I don't think it's a problem. So this would leave us with a children's playground area and a couple of benches. Have I messed you up, Mark, on my motion?
No, that's fine.
So that's your proposed motion? Are you seconding the motion?
Can I just suggest a somewhat change in wording before I say it?
Well, maybe you could be friendly bend his arm.
I just wondered after some of the comments we heard tonight, that so you're basically all you want is the children's playground with slide and the swings, and a couple of benches. Given that we've heard there's technical issues with toddlers, and given that we've heard that maybe some of the older kids like bars to climb on, if we're going to eliminate the basketball thing and the disc, whatever you call it, and covered children, could we just say, in your motion, could you say a somewhat more elaborate children's playground thing that would include something for somewhat older children and the toddlers? I've never thought of the toddler problem until who brought it up? Somebody who has to lift their kids into the swings every time.
You know, you're quite right as usual, but I don't think it's necessary. I think we can leave that to Kim. Hi, Kim.
Just a couple of comments. One is we do have sun shelters at a couple of our playgrounds for parents to get into out of the sun beside playgrounds. One is at Lono Center Park, and another one is at Cardinal Woods Park. So we do have sun shelters. and they were put in at the request of residents for some type of sun protection. And the other point is just clarification that if council is asking for the playground to be expanded to include play features for the older children, and there are lots out there, but they come at a price. So the budget that has been put forth to you is for as a very basic playground, something similar to what we have at Cardinal Woods right now, which would not afford you some of the play features that you're looking for.
And what age group is it targeted?
It says
Um,
2 to 12.
The play structure that's been put in all of our parks are for 2 to 12-year-olds.
Happy with that.
I don't have a problem with the sun shelter. It's a small ticket item. And I like the motion in terms of its thinning out the issues on that side. I'm wondering whether, and maybe this is for another day, but as I listen to some of the discussion tonight, the question of the area south of the French Drive next to the sewage treatment plant, the septic bed area came up. And I know that that is slated for another septic bed, but what we don't know is whether that's going to take up all the space that's available potentially down there. And if it didn't, that might be a preferable location than the currently proposed one. I mean, we could leave that for another day and make some inquiries as to exactly what's going on south of French Drive. But in the meantime, I think the fallback is a modified parkette in the current area.
Just in response, is when I did go out there prior to our walkabout and I did look around, that exact location came to my mind as well. Came back and discussed it with our Director of Public Works, and he was not entirely sure that that could happen there, and was much relieved when we looked at the other location. The other thing being is he was concerned about children and parents, or children especially, crossing that busy road to get to a park over by the water treatment plant, or the sewage treatment plant that's over there, because we have had indications about how busy that roadway is. I'm happy with certainly pursuing it with our Director of Public Works once again, and bringing back some type of report to you in that regard. I'm just letting you know that that conversation has been had, and those were some of our concerns.
Well, I'm happy with that, but I think that Councillor Makalow's motion should go ahead here tonight, mindful of the fact that there might be a change in overall location for a parkette only in the vicinity of the septic bed. I mean, it doesn't sound very glamorous, does it? But you know, it sounds like we really don't know until there's clarity on the part of how that new septic bed or additional septic bed is designed, whether we've got any room in there or not. If we had room, great. I think that would be an ideal location for it.
As I understand it, you're waiting for a second to Ralph's motion, which isn't.
I will second Ralph's motion. Well, I'm hoping he'll reconsider the sun shelter, but what it does is eliminate the frisbee golf and the half court, as I understand it.
Kim?
And can I just have clarification as far as the budget that was put forth for the playground? Because if you're looking for, as I said, additional features to accommodate the older people or the older children, and like I said, there are climbing walls out there. There are net structures out there. There's amazing things out there that I have not ever been able to put forth because of budget constraints as far as playgrounds are concerned. But I am more than happy to show council some of the things that are available. But I would be limited in the budget that has been put forth to you right now.
Okay, so part of the discussion was the additions of more swings for the youngers, as opposed to, I
So
don't know that we
swings
were into.
swings were not even included in that budget.
Okay, then that's clarification there.
We've already saved.
Exactly, exactly, you have. So I just am making sure, because there is a price put beside that feature. I believe I put 165,000. And I'm just saying, if you put this motion forward and keep it at that price, then I'm going to be very limited in being able to offer what you're looking for.
But for that location alone, we've saved $52,000.
No, that's great.
Not to mention what we've done over on
Yeah, so
Island Lake.
just what I'm saying is for the.
We're ready for increased.
You're ready, that's all I need to hear, is that you're ready for me to bring in
It's got to come
something
forward.
a little
It's
more.
going to have to come forward for an RFP anyways, and be discussed.
Just making sure.
Okay, so just want to make sure that, Mark, is that,
Was there a friendly amendment to remove the covered porch area from the original resolution? I think the original resolution was that we approved the fieldstone parquet absent the frisbee golf, basketball, and the covered protected area. And then there was discussion about, I think, putting the protected area back in.
If I can, I can revise the motion to include the covered area.
sun shelter?
I think we would just delete the, so I think the resolution as amended would read that we approve the fieldstone parquet absent the frisbee golf and the basketball structure.
Where would be more positive to say we approved the fieldstone
Same.
parquet with the playground equipment and the sun shelter?
Same thing.
I know it sounds a bit more positive than saying.
Well, I'm working with the resolution that's already been
But
put
we
on the
never
floor.
got a seconder.
John
But he was prepared to second as long as the sun shelter went back in, and I did not get it clarified by the mover that he was going to agree. So now he's agreed, so we can keep it positive. And we need to not lose the issue of alternative sites within the Fieldstone subdivision area.
That could be a friendly amendment then to the alternate sites. I think we've covered the sun shelter. I've accepted that. And John has seconded it.
Because if it comes back that there are no other sites that are going to be workable, then we may have to revisit the whole issue of the design and the configuration, et cetera, and the placement. Okay. Are we good?
That we approve the fieldstone parquet to include the children's play structure and sun shelter.
And so that was
Are you
moved by
happy?
Magtalo and seconded by Creelman. And all in favor? Carried. Okay, so did you have any more, Ralph?
Not at this time, I think, John.
Okay, so John, back to you.
I only have two. So the next motion is that the proposed lighting for pathways parking in the Island Lake Family Park be struck from the plan at an estimated saving of between $52,000 and $72,000. I don't know if I have a seconder for this, but my rationale is that we heard loudly and clearly from the residents they do not want lighting there at night, and this was not something that I remember council talking about. They talked at length about lighting the tennis court, but I don't believe there was any discussion about lighting pathways or parking areas.
Okay. So do we have a seconder for that? Seconded by Martin? Yes, you can.
again, John, I mean, I can go for it. I guess my concern is probably gonna be another one of these questions that no one can answer. If we've got a tennis court over here with lights on it, and it's late September, October, and people are playing tennis till 9 o'clock, is there gonna be a problem with those people walking down the pathway over to the parking lot with no lights?
You even have to say a word.
I couldn't help myself.
I guess you're right. I mean, everyone can spell flashlight, then I don't have a problem with that.
And I think in the holistic approach in terms of what I was looking at originally was the idea of phasing in a lot of things. So we start off with these basics, and if this becomes a problem, then it's brought forward and we have that discussion and try and figure out how to resolve it. Okay. So,
I think Fred's got a good point. Actually, I gave it to him. Even without your light, if I'm returning from the northwest end there and the dark of night, I wouldn't mind having an occasional light along the pathway. I'm happy with waiting until people complain if you like, Your Honor, and then we add them. But I think it's going to be something that people want. It's pretty dark down there.
okay, so if there's anything further, call for the vote. All in favor? And opposed? Okay, so it passed, 1 negative. John? Oh, it can't, don't say last. Never.
I am a reluctant convert to the notion of tennis in this location. I think there's better approaches to build on the strengths that we already have. It's arguable as to how many people avail themselves of tennis, but I think the citizens of South Bend deserve amenities, and this is an amenity that might well be used. It's a prelude to a motion. However, I am not in favor of lighting this court, at least not initially. Again, for the same reasons as previously stated, as articulated by many people who have spoken here tonight and spoken on previous occasions. So I have a motion that only infrastructure for tennis court lighting be installed and limited to conduits and footings for light standards, and that a decision on the illumination of the courts be made at a later date. Were this to pass, it would deal with the issue of people playing tennis late at night and having to find their way up to the parking lot. So I'm acknowledging here that it probably makes sense to bury the conduits and put in the footings at the time of construction as opposed to at a later date. So I don't know if I have this.
Seconded by Martin. And so are we okay with,
No, actually, if, Deputy Mayor, if you could just read that, I didn't get the second half.
That only infrastructure for tennis court lighting be installed, infrastructure for tennis court lighting limited to conduits and footings for light standards, and that a decision on illumination of the courts be made at a later date. And we'll see whether there's a demand, and I recognize that the type of illumination would be significantly better than what we currently have either in Home Center or at Parklands.
so that was moved by second by Martin. So Councillor Mantalo?
I'd like to speak to that. I'm not a tennis player, but I did watch Bianca play, and the TV was so good that sometimes you could see the spin on the ball coming right off her racket, and that's actually what tennis is about. It's about seeing the spin. So that to play tennis, well, you have to see well. It's not about being, whether it's dark or dusk. In fact, on a cloudy day, you might want to turn the lights on because it's that important that you can see well. So I think that it would make this facility, it'd be doomed to fail, because people who wanted to play tennis, who were keen tennis players, would go continue where they are. The Island Lake people would continue going into Orangeville or up to Mona Center because they couldn't play tennis at both ends of the season. And if you don't have the good people there, you don't have the coaching, you don't have the nucleus for a club, and it just isn't going to go anywhere. So I think that it's a mistake. I think you're making a situation that you're asking, is it going to be a success, and you're making conditions that it can't be a success. So I strongly feel, John, that we need to have a full tennis facility, and I don't want to be the town that couldn't do it right, because if you don't have lights, we're going to have a place that is not going to be used in this season. Like right now, it's September. We got 2 more months of playing tennis, and you can't do it after 7 o'clock at night, or a dull day 6:30. So you're really losing the ends, particularly the autumn season. I would like an. I never expected that from you. I would liken it, John, to Sharon having a cross-country ski facility and not having a building that she could work with, and having to just have the trails. It'd be a partial thing and it wouldn't go well. Or me having a rowing club without having docks that I had to wade in the water. Sure, I can wade in the water, that's fine, but I wouldn't do it in May and I wouldn't do it in October. So I wouldn't even go to that club because I want a full service club. So I think that's really not the wisest thing to do, and I would not support the motion.
Councillor Nix?
I agree with Ralph on this, and because I thought this might be coming, John, I actually consulted with someone who trains tennis players. I don't play tennis, but I understand, as Ralph said, it's very important to be able to see that spin on the ball, even in low light. So I think if we're going to build a tennis court, let's do it properly. Let's put the lights there. So I'm not going to support your amendment.
Well, as I said, I'm reluctant, hesitant, but supportive now of putting in courts and planning for the future, but not right away. As I said at the last council meeting, in many of these areas we're going from 0 to 60, and I think we need to proceed cautiously, and if the case can be made for elimination, then I think we deal with that. I'm not opposed to elimination forever, but at least to start with.
If I could ask if anyone on staff know when the lights were installed at Mona Center and when they were installed in Cardinal Woods?
Both sets of lights were installed. Both sets of lights were installed with the courts at Cardinal Woods. Cardinal Woods courts were installed the year that I started here, so 29 years ago, and those lights were there when they were installed. Now, Mono Center lights, they were installed prior to my being here, so they have been installed for at least 29 years. Whether or not they were installed with the actual courts, I can't say for sure, but I know they've been there at least 29 years. The other thing that I'll just say is one thing that was brought to my attention is that a lot of people in the heat of the summer, you'll see tennis courts are empty. And the reason for that is because it is so hot. People just do not play tennis between the hours of basically 11 and 5. When you're on a tennis court as well, the surface of a court adds 5 degrees to the temperature. So people will tend to play during the months of June, July, August, more so at the beginning of the day and at the end of the day. And without putting the lights on again, you are circumventing the time frame that people will be able to play. I did look into some new types of lighting, LED lighting, low level lighting, where the span is considerably shorter than it is at the present courts that we have at Mono Center and at Cardinal Woods, which again, would definitely reduce the light pollution. So I'm here nor there. I'm happy with or without, but I just want to make council very aware of some comments that I have received in regards to the times that people play tennis.
Just to remind us all about the survey, of all the structured games that we asked people if they're interested in, such as baseball, soccer, tennis, pickleball, etc., tennis was the one that was most strongly supported. In fact, there were 253 persons within Island Lake and Fieldstone that said that they would use the courts and play there. So I think that we've got a pretty strong mandate for this. I can say this very easily because I'm not a tennis player. It doesn't do me any good. I'd like to see a rowing club down there, but that's not going to happen. I think we need to make this a success from the start, and without lights, I don't see it as possibly being a success. Whether we have a club type of organization or we have some other type of community organization, I'm not sure what it's going to be, but it's going to be dependent upon strong people who are interested in tennis being willing to take part. And I think these people are not going to be playing there; they're going to be elsewhere. So we're going to fake this to a failure without putting the lights in. I may be wrong, but that's my feeling.
So any other comments, discussion? Yes?
And just as a reminder that at both sets of our courts, we do have timers on our lights. So no matter what, when we set the timer, even if you push the button to turn the lights on, if it's past the time that we set, which can be 10 o'clock, 10:30, whatever, lights will not go on.
Okay, so call for the vote. All in favor of your motion?
I understand.
Okay. So that was defeated. So for clarification then, do we need to establish that we are to go through, staff did make up a list, so we've got north-south accessible pathway and park benches. Are we in favor of those?
We've approved it. We've approved Kim's plan in principle with the modifications. So I don't know that we need to check box all of the additional.
Well, I just want to make sure that we're all aware. So north-south accessible pathway and park benches, level playing field, the two tennis courts with lighting, 1 or 2 picnic shelters. I guess that is dependent on size and pricing with accessible tables. The parking has been looked after. A washroom facility. So on the Island Lake Park listing from Kim's report, it says 2 picnic shelters at $50,000. So is that the revised size? Like you've made them smaller than was originally? Okay, okay, so it's 2. Washroom facility that is waterless or serviced with water and septic system. So, yes.
I think that we might have an environmental issue here if we are this close to CVC. Have we done what we need to do to find out whichever we chose, whether it was water with a septic system, or if it was waterless with a tank? I think there needs to be some environmental things dealt with, because of particularly where it is on this design anyway.
I'm sure Kim applies, you know, when the different, if you have to apply for a CVC permit, you have to apply for it. They'll tell you. I mean, the CVC itself has one on the north side of the lake at the end of Huron-Ontario Street with a holding tank. If they can put it that close to the lake there, I can't see what the problem is putting one on the south side, but I'm not.
I just want that covered, that's all.
Okay. So, storage facility?
So are we going with waterless? Is that, okay, thank you.
Storage facility, at 10,000. And then, pathway and parking lot is done. 10 is the landscaping and privacy features.
I think that will have to be, a lot of that will have to be determined when we get some topography and look at the grades and excess fill that we may have.
Okay. So, would you, do you want this?
I think we're fine. I think council's, you know, you've approved it in principle. You've made decisions on the major details. I think we're fine. I think the rest is consistent with the report that Kim has brought forward.
So do we have to direct staff to proceed with creation of tender documents by the town's engineers to develop these facilities? And to take the necessary steps to?
Well, that would be the next step in the process.
Okay. So do you want to have a separate motion then just for that one paragraph?
You're not looking at staging the 2 parks either. You're looking at doing it all next year. The 2 parkettes all in 2020.
What happened? I mean,
I know you didn't discuss it. I know it was brought up tonight that it should be done at the same time, and as long as you're comfortable with that, we were trying to space it through. If it's just with the modified structure as the parkette, it should be a much more simpler process.
Right. So did you want just that simple motion, that direction?
Sure, that would be great.
Okay. So
it'd just be that.
The motion that council directs staff to proceed with the creation of tender documents by the town's engineers to develop these facilities. Moved by Nix and seconded by Magtalo. Any further discussion? All in favor? That carries. Okay. So, I think that's number 1. Okay. So number 2 of new business, discharge of firearms at night bylaw.
As that's my motion, I'm happy to defer it to the next meeting. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Fine.
So moved
Okay.
by Creelman and seconded by Nix that we introduce and give the necessary readings to a bylaw to restrict the discharge of firearms at night, that it be signed by the mayor and the clerk of the town of Mono, sealed and engrossed in bylaw book. All in favor? Carries. And 3, amendment to bylaw 2004-69 fire bylaw. And this was to amend bylaw, being a bylaw to regulate the setting of fires that be signed by the mayor and clerk, town Mono, and sealed and engrossed in bylaw book. And that's changing the size of fire to 3 cubic meters for rural, for properties that are larger than 1 acre. So moved by Creelman and seconded by Martin. Any discussion? All in favor? Carries.
We'll get information on that out in the fall newsletter as well. That's why we brought it forward tonight.
Okay. So item 4, posted speed limit on Ontario Street south of the Island Lake Conservation Area. This is fascinating stuff. About time. So that we introduce and give the necessary readings to a bylaw to prescribe the maximum rate of speed on Ontario Street from Buena Vista Drive to the Island Lake Conservation Area entrance, that it be signed by the mayor and the clerk for the town monosealed and Grovestown bylaw book. Moved by Martin and seconded by Nix. Any discussion? All in favor? Carries. And Schedule A. If there's anything that anybody picks out that is of an urgent nature, would you want or have it come back on the next agenda for? So, should we actually pick out which ones and pass the ones that we will defer and just pass the ones that we don't need to come back again? So I would assume number 1 doesn't have to come back. Okay, so this, if we pass Schedule A, this is going to be part of Schedule A that we're passing, okay? So we will pass number 1.
Number 2, of course, I want to compliment CBC on that.
Yeah.
Because they're real more legalistic report. I mean, I think it's a tremendously good idea.
Okay. So the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, do we need that to come back? Okay.
Your worship, that will come back.
It's going to come back regardless?
Right. I mean, we're bringing that back. We're looking at funding opportunities, so that will come
Okay.
back.
So the minutes from Rosemont Fire Board, we don't need that to come back. The sound monitoring for CBC. Yeah, they're doing a great job, so that's good. Watson's regarding draft regs.
I didn't understand all that.
Okay. So, Mr. Luca, are you going to give us Cole's Notes version at some point on this, or are we just supposed to nod?
They're still in the process of figuring out how they're gonna levy the CBC. They're in a consulting stage, so nothing's really final. So at this point, I'm not sweating about it. More details come.
So we don't need this to come back to us then? So
We've got
that's,
it down the road anyway.
okay, so that's number 6 and 7?
Pretty much.
Okay, how about number 8? Do we need that to come back? It's information only? Okay, 9. Done. And 10. And Canadian Hemp Farmers Alliance. Okay, so can we bring 11 back only? Okay, and so then that means that we're accepting Schedule A, number 1 to number 10 to this agenda. And that's moved by Martin and seconded by Creelman. All in favor? Carries. And reports of staff, is there anything of an urgent nature or anything you want to crow about?
I don't usually have much to crow about, but
You do.
I passed around I sent an email to council last week, and I'm hoping council's in agreement with that format. Basically, not that there's anything against the business plans, they just didn't add anything to the overall budget process.
And then we'll start the budget. Second meeting in October, Fred and I will get together, figure out the COLA, we'll have the capital plans, and then moving forward with the regular budget process.
Two real quick. In terms of the water main construction on Highway 9, the town solicitors and engineers are finalizing the draft of the water main agreement. We're not bringing it to council as of yet. It's pretty straightforward, but we're looking for buy-in from all 10 property owners first, so we're going to be providing it to them. Jeff, we will be providing a copy to council. It's not going to be on their formal agenda to be adopted for signing as of yet until we get buy-in from the other parties, so we'll make sure you get a copy of it. The last thing is just from bylaw, just following up on Deputy Mayor Creelman's comments last meeting. I've already let council know that the Esso property, they're in for demolition permits at the county. I don't know whether they've been issued or whether they've started work, but they are progressing. That was being held up with TSSA. And today we've issued orders against the owner of the Neighborhood Square property to have the signs pulled down. He's cleaned up the property. He refuses to deal with this on the site, so we've gone to an order to have it down by the end of the month, and then we'll move from there.
And Mark, how about that other property that's got the porta potty and storage bin and a wreck of a truck?
I'm meeting with bylaw tomorrow morning. Actually, we're going to go through all our files and bring you a detailed report back on all of the bylaw. We do have a particular. We do have a person in town who had complaints against her regarding abandoned vehicles on her property. We're now faced with, I would basically call them vexatious complaints, where she is literally driving around the municipality laying 3 more property complaints a day kind of on us on this car's missing a tire on this particular property. This car, right? So we're getting it all over the place from her. So.
You proposing hiring her as a bylaw inspector?
As assistant? Anyways, that was it. Thanks.
So there's nothing else from staff that?
I would only add the Dufferin County is holding a meeting September 30th to review the OMAFRA mapping, which is OMAFRA mapping versus our rear mapping OP 37.
Is there anything that you have, Ralph?
Well, I told Fred about a half an hour, but I think I can shorten it. There's a lot going on in healthcare, and you really need to know about it. And I can present most of it next time. I attended a forum last night, which is for the Headwaters Health Team, which is composed of the Headwaters Hospital, about 70 family docs, a number of specialists, and about, I'm not sure, maybe 15 other small associations. So it's become the Headwaters Health Team and Collaborative, and they're trying to figure out how to govern and what kind of application to put in. The applications have to be in by October the 9th for the next stage of being accepted as a health team. There are 31 health team proposals that have been accepted through stage 1, and now they're going into stage 2. This is going to affect all of us hugely. With respect to the Board of Health, I can't tell you a lot because it was an in-camera session, but it looks like our Wellington, Dufferin, Guelph Board of Health is going to split along the lines of 2/3, 1/3, with Dufferin staying with the present proposal, which is to go with Peel, which will fit with the Ontario Health Team. But I think we're going to be a pimple on the side of Peel, and we won't have anything to say. And it looks like Wellington and Guelph will probably ask the minister to go with the North, Perth and Huron, etc. And there's lots of interesting stuff coming out from them about things like vaping, rabies, overdoses. Just for one number, 11,500 people in the last less than 4 years in Canada died from overdoses. Can you believe it? And vaping is really interesting. You probably read about vaping reports of about 200 or so people that admitted to hospital in the United States and a few dead. And it's such a vague report. We really don't know what they were vaping because you can vape all kinds of different things. But maybe I'll talk a little about that because I did nothing about vaping, and now I know a little bit more. That's all, Your Honor.
Okay. Fred, yeah. John, yeah.
I do.
Oh, I'm sorry, there's a trail, bike and cycle meeting tomorrow, and it's at Menora Park at 7 o'clock. I don't know how many of you are coming. Fred's
Well,
coming
it's a council meeting.
tomorrow.
It's a public council meeting. So that you as a committee will present to us.
I'm confused.
So in other words, we as council, who,
You guys all set the date.
yeah, we set the
You
date.
set the date to go to public meeting. We advertise it as special
Yeah,
council meeting.
so it's a special council meeting. So what will happen is, yeah, I will open the meeting, but I'll hand it over to the committee so that you can present, and then we can go from there and take
Fine. I missed that little arrangement, but nuance, yeah, that's fine. Remember, it's gonna be at Menora Park.
Yeah.
And so we've got a program. Mike Dunsmore and I have chatted about it. He's gonna bring the hard stuff for the projection, et cetera. So I have, by the way, I've knocked on doors of those people in the Randy, Linda, and here in Ontario, and I got 4 of the 6 in. I'll go back and try the other 2. And they had some concerns about putting a formal trail and thought it should be left as a grass bank. But I think I copied all of it.
Yeah. That's good. Okay, so you're good? Okay.
Thank you.
Briefly, we had a POA Board of Management meeting last week. Very productive. Caledon is now giving us the statistics that allow us to actually know what's going on. And in the course of that meeting, which has representatives from all different municipalities, we were informed of court closures in 2020. And I have, apropos of that, a notice of motion that I'd like to drop tonight for discussion at the next meeting. But we are losing a lot of court time as a result of there being chronic shortages of justices. They're not being appointed by the province on a timely basis, and as a consequence, the court has no recourse other than to close courts. So at the appropriate moment, I'll do my notice of motion.
Okay. Sharon, did you have anything?
No, not really, but I did have a couple who talked about an astonishing amount of litter along the Huckley Road. They were headed out to go on to the Bruce Trail, and they walked from their place, and it's not that far. It's not even 5K, and they had 2 bags of garbage. I'm just wondering if we have a litter bylaw that could be enforced somehow. I'm really sick and tired of Tim Hortons stuff being dumped on my roadway. It's really nice that they came along, cut the grass in front of my place, because they just turned up all the paper stuff that was thrown out from Tim Hortons.
So in terms of, remember when Elaine Keogh was here and she was asking about us starting up 2 times a year, clean up the ditches. We can, but the problem's going to be what, in terms of fall, when is the right time? Because the grass is quite tall until you get your first snowfall, and then it's not very pleasant. So we still work on that. Yeah. Okay, so notice of motion, John.
Okay, whereas Provincial Offences Court currently convenes twice a week in Orangeville, and whereas 2 sittings a week are needed to effectively address case volume, and whereas we are told that up to 32% of those court sitting days in Orangeville may be lost in 2020 due to a shortage of justices of the peace, and whereas it is estimated there are currently 30 unfilled justice of the peace vacancies province-wide, with probably half again as many retirements expected, and whereas the latest round of Justice of the Peace applications and interviews are complete and names forwarded to the Attorney General for consideration, therefore be it resolved that Mono and other municipalities urge the province to appoint qualified persons as Justices of the Peace as soon as possible, so that they can be trained and assigned to courts otherwise threatened with closure due to judicial shortages, and that this motion be circulated to there's a list.
Okay. Thank you. So if there's no further business, we'll close off. So we introduce, give the necessary readings to a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of Council of the Town of Mona, Session 16, 2019, held on the 10th of September 2019, that be signed by the mayor and the clerk, sealed and engrossed in the bylaw book. Moved by Mantalo and seconded by Martin. All in favor? Carried, and we adjourn at 10:30 p.m. Job well done, everybody. Moved by Nix and seconded by Creelman. All in favor? Carries. See you tomorrow night.